That means we're good to go. So let's dig into it. Let's officially welcome everybody. We are super excited that so many people showed up for this live. That's awesome. We sent out an email, we did some posts in the group, and yeah, big welcome to the 7 Day Fast Start. So me and Alan are here, obviously, for those of you that joined us before we went live, but we were going to launch this thing about 2 weeks ago, and then we just kind of sat down and were like, man, why don't we just go all out and just make this thing great? And this is a lot of credit goes to Alan. I'm typically the person who's like, let's move fast and let's just get things done. And Alan's like, well, let's do it right. Let's make it great so that people actually remember it. And that's why it's good to have him in my corner. So, Alan, officially here, I guess, welcome to you, right? A lot of people, you've kind of been, I don't want to say the sidelines, but you're kind of more behind the scenes, and so it's good to have you out front more, being able to help these guys out. Alan, for those of you who don't know, has endless experience and wisdom around making money on the internet. So, can you give people just a quick 30-second background, because man, you've been around,
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so okay, yeah, been doing this since 2004. Sold over 100 million online. Did everything except porn. We'll probably get into that down the road. It's like a life mission. I have to. Yeah. Did everything except that, and then pretty much sold high ticket, low ticket, medium ticket, super high ticket. $100,000 deals. Had a supplement company, sold it, did that. Sold software, ran an email thing, had an ad network, sold the ad network, yada yada yada, a lot of stuff like that. A lot of well-known gurus come to me, paid me a lot of money to help them out. Yeah, and my core skill is conversions and marketing and selling online. And so what I do is I would say like behavioral psychology, if I had to boil it down. And I can see and know how to do things where I know where how the person's going to react, right? So for example, like when I was building our offer, automatic clients, it's a lot of that was going into that, and basically, it's doing really well right now. And so, yeah, I mean that's kind of my backstory. And I never liked guruing, right? I never liked guruing. I don't know why. I did it once. I did it in like 2010 once, and I remember I did a course, and I think I made like 1.3 million off of it in like a few weeks. And that course, Mike Botempo, a good friend of mine, Mike Botempo, and you guys might see his ads everywhere. He's like one of the best guys when it comes to running ads. Stole it, and he hit me up later, and he's like, "Man, it's like I just made 100 grand off your course." And I was like, "Yeah, what's your email?" And he's like, "Oh, I stole your course." And I was like, "All right, fuck it." And then we became good friends. But that was cool, And I did that one course, and I got a lot of great reviews from it, and then helped a lot of people out. And yeah, I never liked guruing and stuff like that. I don't know why. I just don't have the payoff for it, And so like some people this is this debate of are you an external person or external person? Like internal people typically like me, mostly internal, don't really get a lot of energy from being out there, whereas a lot of external people, they get a lot of energy from being out there, right? And so I derive my energy from doing this, and this is kind of my art, my craft, This is what I really enjoy, and I'm extremely good at it, And so a lot of you guys, that came here, be it through the 2 hour agency offer or the automatic clients, is because, probably because of the ads I created or the copy I wrote, or the emails I sent, or etc. I had an influence on you without you knowing it. And probably a lot of you guys out there that have bought other offers, and interacted with that, I probably had some type of influence on that too, one way or another. And yeah, that's kind of my backstory. And automatic clients is basically like accumulation of a lot of the stuff I learned. I wouldn't say everything, but it's a lot of stuff I learned when it comes to getting customers and clients in this space, right? Because the way me and Robert met, I think in 2018, like I was doing webinars from like 2014, 2018, did really well with that, right? And it's funny because like I wasn't paying attention to the fact that, hey, a lot of people are teaching this webinar stuff. I was just doing them, and we're doing really well, like doing some really, really advanced stuff. And in 2018, like the guy I was working with, he went into real estate. He took a lot of the money from the webinars we made. He went to real estate in New York, and then I was like, all right, whatever. What am I going to do now? And so I got into consulting, and a lot of well-known gurus paid me a whole lot of money to help them out, right? And then one of Robert's buddies paid me like 25 grand for consulting, and I did that. And then one of my other clients was doing like 1,000 sales a day with one of his offers with books. And me and Robert were chatting, and I was like, hey, got this guy over here doing 1,000 sales a day with a book. And then like, I don't know, a week, 2 weeks later, Robert hits me up and he's like, oh, look, I wrote this book called The 2 Hour Agency. And he did all right. You know, it wasn't bad. It was pretty good. And I was like, shit, I saw blood in the water and I was like, I'm going in. And then we were like, let's do it. And then we blew that offer up, right? And a lot of people in the group come from there, right? That world, you know? You know, we did that. We did a lot. We learned a lot with that offer. And yeah, after that, it was like, you know, one of the lessons we learned is like, you know, what you get, you know, what you sell in the front is what you get in the back, right? And so, you know, 2 Hour Agency was a great offer in the sense that it was a great offer for us. But what it was, it attracted people who just wanted to work 2 hours, right? And the crazy thing is, like, Robert really did work 2 hours, right? And we had a lot of that. Like, there's no way it's not possible. He actually worked less, and we had a lot of backlash that people thought we were lying and stuff. And I'm like, no, you know, we're not. It's fucking true, you know. It's like he's like, he really does it. I know it, you know. And we got a lot of people in the back, but what we learned from that offer was that, you know, you get, you know, what you sell in the front is what you get in the back, right? And then the decision was like, you know, we really don't want to work with these people in the back as much because that's not kind of the spirit we want to have. You know, what does it really take to build a business online, right? And then so I started working on automatic clients, and at first, you know, the idea was like, let's just launch this thing and make a shit ton of money, like a quick money grab, right, in the market. And then I was like, I've done that, you know. And so one of the things is like, I've done a lot of like, you know, I've done a lot of great offers. I've done a lot of kind of like, you know, I'm not really proud of these type of offers, made a lot of money with those, you know, and I've done everything in between, right? And so like, for me, it's like, I've been in that world for a very long time. And like, I just wanted to like build something I'm proud of, you know? And to me, like when I say build something I'm proud of is like, you know, you get a lot of these morons on your ads, right? Like you're running ads and like, you know, they'll be just very negative, angry people, right? They'll be like, you know, talking shit on ads. And like, I always wanted to have a defensible position where like our stuff is so good that it's like, that nobody can say anything to us. Like, I just know in my heart of hearts that I can sit there and like argue anybody, anywhere that my shit is good.
Yeah, you can fight back in full force because you know you've put everything into it, you know, just done it right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so we did that, right? And so like instead of writing like a 50-page book, we wrote a 350-page book, right? And then instead of like doing 3 bonuses, we're like, here's 8 bonuses. Instead of like, you know, keeping the, you know, the rapid launch stack and, you know, doing it for the accelerator, which is what we did initially, we made it into an upsell. And so like our philosophy changed, right, on everything. And our philosophy became basically this philosophy of giving away all our knowledge, right? And the only thing we charge for actually is to help people implement that knowledge. That's it. And so like this 7-day fast start is that, you know, we're going to give you all our knowledge. We're going to be in a group giving you all our knowledge, and we're not going to charge you for it, you know. The book is $5, right? And like, if you can't afford $5, I mean, shit, like, you know, there's something wrong there, right? And, you know, we give away all our knowledge, and then we basically just charge to help people implement that knowledge, you know, and that's kind of the difference, you know. And we don't really hold stuff back from people as well. Like, so a lot of people will be like, you know, let me hold this back for, you know, the high ticket stuff, and they'll tease you with stuff, and they'll give you kind of like, you know, 1/8 of the puzzle, and you know, you're trying to do something and it doesn't work, and that sucks, you know. And I remember like I started this in 2004, right? And it took me 2 years to make 24 cents. And back then there was no like YouTube, there was no. It was a different time, you know, and like there was like Warrior Forum and, you know, I think SitePoint and a few others, right? And I had this mentor, I can't remember his name at the time, like some guy just, you know, appeared somewhere, we're like talking, and like he kept telling me he had this like offer where he made money selling socks, you know, and like I was trying to do what he does, but he was very weird, right? And I never got a good vibe from him. And then I remember that, and then I was like, when we were doing, you know, when we started Automatic Clients, we were like, what's our North Star? Like, what are we trying to do here? You know, is it just about making a lot of money? And because, you know, you can do that in a bunch of other markets, you know, it's much better actually to do in a bunch of other markets. Or, you know, what's our North Star? And basically success stories, right? To get people success stories. And like at a certain point, like what ends up happening is like, you know, your reputation precedes you and you're remembered, right? To be remembered, because the biggest thing in marketing is to be remembered, right? And, you know, the other big lesson of marketing is like, you know, to do the unexpected, right? It's like to do the unexpected. So like with this presentation here that we're doing a 7-day fast start, we're doing 2 things. One is to be remembered by you guys, right? And you can remember for good or bad, right? And 2, it's to be is to do something unexpected, right? Which is basically give you all the stuff away. And, you know, you don't, like, I'll be the first to tell you guys here, like, you know, we're going to give you all our information. You don't need to join our accelerator. You don't need to give us any money, you know, whatever. It doesn't matter. You can buy our book, you can refund the book, and you can keep it. It doesn't matter, right? Like our whole philosophy is just to give you information, build a lot of goodwill, and let's see where it takes us, you know? Yeah, and so that's kind of my little spiel. And with that in mind, let's jump into it, you know?
Let's do that. So here we go, guys. Welcome to day 1 of the 7-day fast start. You guys are going to hear where all of those things that Alan mentioned, what that has led to, because, you know, his expertise is second to none. So what this is about, day 1 is, and this is kind of explanation of the whole model and so on is effectively about how to get customers and clients automatically so you can build your dream business, because that's what it's all about. A lot of people can get lost in their business, but we want a dream business. We're all here for a reason. Most of us aren't working because we just love working. I mean, there's a part of that for sure. I mean, I like staying busy and being productive, and I know that Alan loves this, but ultimately we're all looking for an outcome. We want to put our kids in private school or buy a nice house or go travel. Like we're here, most of us, because we want the freedom to make the decisions that we want. We don't want to live on somebody else's clock, right? So that's kind of the end goal. And in order to do that, you need sort of a mechanism that acquires customers. And then what we do with that mechanism is, we get them in the door, they buy the book. Some of you guys have done it. And then we do things like 7-day fast start and other mechanisms to, like Alan said, some of the people, they can just take the information and use it themselves. And then some people want help with the implementation part. And so we convert them into a higher ticket kind of a setup. So I don't know if you want to add anything there, Alan, but this is kind of the overview and the roadmap. But go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's true for sure. Like, to build a dream business, and for me personally, it was always like, what's my dream business, right? And like, so my background is like, I'm from Bosnia, Bosnia. So we came to America in '94 and we came here really poor, right? And so like nobody in my family made $1 million like ever, right? And I remember like 2004 when I started this, it took me like 2 years, to make 24 cents, and I kept telling all my friends and family and stuff like that, and they all thought I was crazy, right? And I remember like we were playing basketball with my friends, and I'm like, hey, I got this thing online, we can sell ebooks. Because selling ebooks was the thing to do back then, right? And I remember, I'll never forget, they all said like, you go figure that out, and then like once you figure it out, you can teach us, right? And I never forgot that, and I never taught them, right? I always, I never taught them, but I'm like, you guys can do this. And what ended up happening is they were kind of where they are in life now, and here I am. But what I realized about a lot of people that do this, it's kind of like we're a little bit of social outcasts, all of us, right? Like we're like dreamers, we're believers, like we're kind of crazy, and it's like this is a lonely fucking journey, And I know it was for me, right? Because it's like back then when I started, it's like there's nobody there. It's just you and the computer, right? And your goals and your dreams, and you're like, how the hell do I do it, right? And then like you show up, you go online, you go in these various groups, and you're like, hey, I'm gonna go do this, I'm gonna go do this, and it's like you'll have somebody write a post and they're like DM me, and next thing you know you're in there messaging, and it's like a strategy call, and it's like, oh shit, it's a sales call, and oh shit, you got to buy this, right? Not good, right? And so building a dream business actually is like, it's really easy actually, and it's based on math, and we'll show you how to do it. One of the things is we have different philosophies than most people out there, right? And one of the biggest differences is that we operate on a model of where people willingly give you money. We architect things so that people willingly give you money instead of you going out there and pushing emotional buttons to get people to give you money, right? So the modern marketing paradigm that everybody operates on. So if you see somebody running ads, if you see somebody operating a group, if you see somebody doing whatever they're doing, right? That paradigm is built on an old paradigm, basically, where it's like people, pushing emotional buttons and kind of doing this bait and switch type of marketing, where people reluctantly give you money, right? And so like what we do is we architect everything. We're gonna share with you how we do it, is where people willingly give you money. And when you approach things to get people to willingly give you money for things you do, it's like a game changer, right? And the way we do it, like the way they manifest is like in our accelerator, a lot of our guys that came in are referrals from our people. Like, so they'll be like, hey, join this shit. Like people are going out there getting other people to join other people. And when that happens, it's really special, right? But yeah, building a dream business, really important because that's part of your dreams, and so as Robert says, you need a mechanism to acquire customers and clients, and you need a mechanism to convert them, right? And so we'll talk about that, and then let's go over the overview. I'll just do that kind of quickly. So day one, this is what you guys are here for right now. We're going to do a bit of an intro, which we're kind of done. We're going to go over the 7-figure economics and the automatic clients model, how it works, where it works, all that. Day two, market, picking your market. Most people have that figured out, but a lot of people don't actually. And then what we talk about is a superpower and a disruptive idea. And I'm not going to dig into it now. We'll do that tomorrow. Day number 3 is about the acquisition offer, the front end. That's about bringing people in through the door, right? Ideally through using some advertising and making your money back on the first day. So they're free customers coming in. Then we have the awareness bridge and your profit center. So at this point, you profit from those customers that came in.
And there's a process to do that. And this was a big lesson from the 2 Hour Agency, this awareness bridge part. It's kind of a crucial component, which is, sometimes when you guys are, there's a big thing, right, where people are funnel hacking and all this stuff. But what they don't realize is like, sometimes there's like one crucial component that makes everything work. And it's kind of like an iceberg analogy where like the stuff that you can see, the stuff that you're funnel hacking, it's not visible what that piece is. So be careful when you guys are going out there and funnel hacking and looking at what people are doing. Like, you have to really do your research if you're going to reverse engineer somebody's business, because like I said, sometimes there's literally one piece that makes it all work, and without that one piece, it literally doesn't work at all. So be careful with that. Day 5 is about getting your first 1,000 customers. So this is doing a organic launch and then starting your first ad. So on my first organic launch with the 2 Hour Agency, just before me and Alan kind of teamed up on it, I did an organic launch on my profile. I had like 2,000 friends, which is really like not that much. And I got 102 people to buy it. So I thought I had nothing, and 102 people buy it. I made $6,000 that I then ended up putting into ads. So that was great. And I'm going to share the post with you and how to do that. Day number 6 is all about getting your first 10 back-end deals, usually high ticket, depends a little bit about which market you're going into and such. And then day 7 is all about kind of scaling and optimizing everything. So that's kind of the game plan. And today, intro, 7-figure economics, and the AC model. So the first thing we want you guys to do is start thinking about your goal. And, I don't want this to sound cheesy or whatever. We all know this is important, right? But it really is important, because like Alan kind of alluded to as well before, and we know that a lot of you guys are here maybe because you did find out through the 2 Hour Agency. Now, as people watch the recording, there's probably more people from Automatic Clients, but the 2 Hour Agency, what you name your book and what you use in your marketing message is going to attract a certain, it's a magnet, right? So whatever you, like Alan said, whatever you put out there is basically what you're going to be attracting. So 2 Hour Agency, as great as it was, the message itself is kind of like, hey, let's attract people who don't want to work. And I understand that there's a lot of people who have good intentions. They also want to make a lot of money, but they're also don't really want to work. And the problem is, as most of us know, if you want to build a legit business and you want to make good money, there's going to be a bunch of work involved. So with Automatic Clients, it's like, even though we have automatic in there, one of the first things, like if we get on a call with somebody to join our accelerator or something like that, or even before they join the call, it's very clear that like what we do here, it's a lot of work, but it works. But the point here is like, you don't want to go off track. You want to be clear on what you're trying to do, because the way that you deploy this model is going to be dictated by your goal. Are you trying to build as big of a business as you can? Or do you have kind of a number in mind? Do you have kind of X amount of hours in mind that you would like to work? You can kind of choose how you want to deploy the model, but make no mistake about it. It's going to require work. This ain't no 2 hour Automatic Clients thing. Like, it's a lot of work, but once you get the machine running, once you get the machine up in place, then you can start to maybe start to systemize things and start delegating and so on. But to get everything running, it's definitely, a couple of things that have to be done. Anything to add, Alan, before we go to the $1 million idea?
Yeah, I'm just switching my microphone. Somebody said it's soft, so I'm getting different headphones in. I don't have a fancy setup, guys, like Robert. I'm like old school with like earplugs.
Well, dude, your microphone is fine. Let's not read into this too much.
Oh, all right. Well, screw it. I switched it. Yeah, I think Robert's right. You got to have an end goal, because you got to measure it against something. How do you know where you're going, right? There's this like delusion out there that everybody's like 7-figure, like 7-figure what? 6-figure what? What's that mean? How does that have an impact on your life, right? So it's like, you got to really have a clearly defined goal to know where you're going, right? And what are you striving towards? I know like Dan Kennedy, right? And I encourage all of you guys to go spend all your money with Dan Kennedy. Great marketer. And like, we should all be thankful, because without him, a lot of us wouldn't be here, including me. He has this thing, where I got from him, because I used to speak at his seminars, like his 2,000 person per seat seminars many years ago. And he said, like, what's your enough is enough number? You got to have enough is enough number. And like, when you get to that, enough is enough number, it's like, I'm good, I made it, And so, there's many stories like that. And like, so we all tend to kind of strive towards this like, endless, right? There's no end to it, right? And it's like having that goal is that gives you, and then you can raise that goal later, but it's really important to know what you want, really important.
Yep. So with that said, Alan, what is the $1 million idea here of automatic clients?
Oh, yeah. So basically, there's this thing, right, where like the, the idea of making seven figures or six figures, whatever, is like very kind of loosely used in our space, right?
Everybody is saying
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Everybody's like seven figure, and the reason everybody says it is because you can't say $1 million because Facebook ads bans you, and YouTube bans you, and Google bans you, right? Because that kind of falls in the category of scams. Um, the problem with that is like it's a very intimidating number, right? And most people out there can't wrap their head around that number because what ends up happening is like when you start a business, like there's this dissonance, like it's like very distant, right? So you're like, how do I go from here to making $1 million a year? And $1 million a year is really not that much money. That's like 83 grand a month, right? And the way you do it is like, you do it in pieces, like most people, nobody goes and builds like, $1 million business. Like Apple didn't start off as a, $1 trillion company. Google didn't start off as like whatever they're worth, Facebook didn't start off being worth whatever they're worth. These companies, like everything around you, like, everything around you start off as like a $1 company, right? So the goal is like to build a $1 company, then a $5 company, then a $10 business, then a $100 business, then a $1,000 business, So for me, it's like when I first, years ago when I had like, after I made my 24 cents after 2 years, I had this software that basically made like websites, right, using WordPress, like Wave when WordPress first came out. And I would like, deploy 10,000 websites on .info domains because they were like cheap, right? And what ended up happening was like, I made like $1,000 a month, right? And it was like, okay, and I just got to repeat that 1,000 times. I got $1 million, and that was my mentality, right? So let me see my notes here as we're talking. Yeah, so every business starts with a, as a dollar business, then a $10 business, and so forth, right? So the thing is like, you really need like a repeatable process to get to 1 mil, right? And basically a business is composed of a lot of smaller transactions, right? And that's it, and then that's the idea of economics, right? And we'll talk about that in a second. And so like I said before we started recording, we're going to jump around a little bit to kind of give you a little more context, but most people out there, they're kind of running blind as far as offers go. They're like, well, this or that or this, and the math doesn't work out, right? And so like marketing and making money.
I'll just put this on screen because this is the next slide, but
Yeah,
go
sure.
ahead.
Like marketing online and making money online, there is really two components. Like it's behavioral psychology and math, right? And then basically I call that economics, right? And so like everybody out there is obsessed with, getting the customer and then profiting from them. So like the webinar model, for example, right? Like, you're running out there and, you have to, you're running the webinar or whatever, or strategy call. And whatever you make, you have to allocate a certain amount of that into the acquisition of the customer. And then whatever is left over is yours, right? Very stressful situation because some days you make nothing, some days you make more. And you can't really optimize this wave pattern, right? Really hard. I mean, you can if you're really good at it, and some people do it. I know some guys doing it, but for most people, they can't, right? And the automatic clients model we have is like you have to acquire the customer first, and then you basically profit, right? That's it. And so you get them in there, and then the reason for this is and then you profit, right, from that acquisition. So it's two different distinct events. And then two is basically competing on economics, right? So let me just check my notes real quick here. Okay, I don't have any notes here, so I'll just go over them. So the thing about economics is like all these guys out there are running around talking about conversions. Like if you go to copywriting, groups on Facebook or forums, whatever, everybody's like, I'll increase your conversion, whatever, and then you got the guys over here, they're like, I'll sell coaching, whatever. But like if you really boil it down to just math, right? And the reason it's just math is because Facebook and Google and YouTube and all these ad networks, they just operate on math, and they don't care like if your dollar comes from from you, if the dollar comes from you or it comes from some big ass company that's worth like $100 million or whatever, right? It doesn't matter. Like your dollars is just as good as anybody else's on those ad networks, right? And then basically they serve it, right? They serve the ads and they say, these people are worth this much. Here's how much the impressions are. And then your job with behavioral psychology is to put these people through this process where money comes out at the other end, right? And basically you stack economics, you keep economics. And so basically as long as you can architect the math, then you can go buy traffic anywhere. And if you can buy traffic, then you can scale, right? And so what's happening is like, I'll give you an example of economics. Like, so let's say you have two offers, right, in the weight loss market. And so in the weight loss market, you have, let's say me and Robert on the weight loss market, right? And, I say lose 20 weight. He says, no, lose 20 weight with my stuff, right? And we're both saying the same thing, right? And then I kind of like twist how I say that. He can twist how he says it. But we'll all be like 10% of each other, right? And that's really not a good competitive advantage. Instead, what we do is like, let me slap on like a big ass, $500 upsell first, And now it's like instead of like trying to convince to get that 10%, it's like I'm getting, $200 more out of every customer that I can go put into ads, and I can buy, I can buy the ads instead of him, and I can take over those spots. and basically, dominate the ad network, and I could just be everywhere all the time. And so that's the basic idea, right? And so what ends up happening is like, everybody in the market space is focused on like, AOV, average order value, right? Or customer value, but nobody's really aware of the fact that there's MLTV, like maximum lifetime value of a customer, right? And so like if you're selling stuff online, you should have like $100,000 worth of, money you can get from the customer, right? That's MLTV, maximum lifetime value. And if you do everything right, you should be able to get like 1/3 over like X amount of time, and that's how it works. And so what most people don't seem to realize is that like, the most, like if your whole thing that you're selling, right, is like $5,000, right? So if you have a book for $5 and you have a coaching team for $5,000 or whatever, right? The most money you can ever get out of their customer is like $5,005, right? You can't get more than that because you don't have anything else to sell them, right? But if you have like $100,000 thing, then it's like you have this massive timeline of the stuff that you can sell them, right, over and over and over again. And so that's the basic idea of competing economics, because you can spend more money to acquire the customer, right? And in like a free ecosystem like Facebook or YouTube or Google, they don't care where the money comes from. If it comes from you, comes from me, it doesn't matter. The only thing they give a shit about is like, who can pay me more for these impressions, right? And if you come there and you're like, you know what, I'll give you more money for these impressions as these other guys, then you get the customers, the other guy doesn't get the customers. And that's all there is to it,
Yeah. So this whole game is about acquisition, right? Like Alan said, with the webinar model, for example, they try to, and we don't want this to be an anti-webinar thing because we're not anti-webinars at all. What we are anti is perhaps the webinar model in the sense of they're trying to acquire the customer and profit from the customer in the same sale. And that's getting just increasingly more difficult. And then there's the other part of it where a webinar, and we all know this, right? Because we've all been on too many webinars. It's like, it's a little bit of trickery going on, right? Like, hey, you're going to learn these 3 secrets or whatever. And then we all find out that at the end of the day, we didn't really learn shit. And it was just a, 20-hour pitch fest, or that's what it feels like, right? So with this model, like Alan said before, you get people to willingly give you money. And the game is all about being able to acquire a lot of customers. And that's the only way to profit from them, these days. It's like you have to first get the customer. And then once you have them, we also like to refer to it, the acquisition, because that sounds very transactional. We like to refer to it as like starting relationships. We're starting relationships at scale, So we run ads, people buy our books, they join our Facebook groups. You guys are here right now watching this, listening to us, and we're starting a relationship. And then that's when the idea of profiting and turning the business profitable becomes a thing. So anything to add on this, Alan? Just how this whole idea, this whole, just the idea that the business kind of revolves around the idea of being able to acquire customers. And if you don't have that skill set, then what are you going to do?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it basically, when it comes to, that's very true, right? But there's something to add to it. The game is basically all about acquisition, yes, but it's like who can pay the most to acquire the customer, right?
Right.
And so one of the biggest things is like, when I first started many years ago, there was very few of us doing this, right? There was like a few guys from, US, there was like 2-3 guys from Canada, a handful of guys from UK, like I think 2 guys from Australia and 1 guy from New Zealand. That was it, right? And maybe somebody in South Africa, I can't remember. A very small crowd, right? And it was fine, right? But now it's like the whole damn planet wants to do this, right? It's like everybody, right? And so it's like you got ClickFunnels over there running massive amounts of ads every day. You got Sam Mullins running ads. You got these guys running ads. You got us running ads. And it's like the algorithms are like kind of like putting more people into this, right? Creating more competition, right? And it doesn't matter if they're good or not. What ends up happening is like you'll have like 50,000 people, and they're all like, I want to try my hand at this gold rush, right? And so they're doing it, and every day you have 10 new people showing up competing with you, would basically raises the cost of acquisition, right? And so it's like most people are focused on other stuff out there, that's totally irrelevant to this idea of acquisition. Whereas the real thing, that your whole energy should be spent on how can I pay to acquire more customers? How can I pay more? And everybody's mentality out there, like, and you see this happening in groups and everywhere, is how can I pay less, right? How can I pay less?
How can I lower my CPA, right?
Yeah, that's the thing, right? And I'm just like, no, I just want to pay more. I want to pay more. I don't care. I like that I'm paying more because I'm solving a very complex problem that you can't solve. And if I can solve it, I can get the customers. Therefore, I get more money out, right? And the other thing is like, as far as customer acquisition goes, like, I had this funny thought. It's like in this space, right? In this space, this get clients space, it's like everybody's always selling how to get clients, how to get more clients. And I'm like, what the hell? You guys don't know how to keep your clients, right? That's a problem, because they're all like, how to get more clients. And it's like, that's the thing. It's like there's all these components to it, and it's like you got to acquire the customer, as Robert said. You got to build a relationship with them, and you got to keep them, right? And so the reason I brought that up is because like our worldview of getting clients and customers and stuff like that is basically that our customers and clients are a renewable financial resource, right? So for example, there's like 54 people on this call, right? There's 54 people here, and let's say average you guys make 50 grand a year, right? And so like my job as a marketer, business owner, operator, whatever, is to architect a process, a system where I insert my shit in your head, right? A process, and then you give us like a percentage of your income every year, like 5 grand, 3 grand, whatever, in exchange for good value, right? And so it's like you, on one hand, you have this massive acquisition where you're, putting all the money in and you're paying more than everybody else, right? Because you want to solve that problem. And I have a side note to say about this. If you guys see like some of these guys running ads, as like Facebook agency guys, right? Typically, and they'll see them post like, look at this client, I got him 1,700, whatever, blah, 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 right? You'll see that, right? What they don't tell you is that it has nothing to do with ads. It's all about the offer, right? So like the ads right now we're living in an algorithmic era, right? Where it's like the algorithms and systems are so good that it's like, it doesn't really matter. You can a 5-year-old can run ads on Facebook. It's not that hard, right? The offer is everything, right? The economics and the offer. And so what ends up happening is like, there's this thing where, a strong offer will come out and somebody will run the ads and they're like, look at all this stuff I'm killing it, right? I'm killing it. It's like, no, it's the offer, right? And most people are like, oh my God, if that guy just ran my ads, he could lower my costs, we could do well. And it's like, yeah, I'll lower your ads, just give me money, right? And that's a problem because everybody wants to solve the same problem, which is lowering the cost of acquisition. You can't, because it's like, Facebook has something like 8 million data points, right? YouTube has like even more because they have the phones and, the browser and everything, and Google. And so it's like, you can't really, and a lot of people out there, they're like, I know how to manage Facebook or YouTube, whatever. You don't, you're guessing. And that's the truth, like I'm really good at running ads and I'm guessing most of the time, and the thing does it for me, right? And so the thing is, it's like when you're acquiring customers, your mentality needs to be, if you like, now listen, like you can do this short term, make a little bit of money, and that's fine, but if you want to make a whole lot of money online, the first thing you got to think of is how can I pay more for everybody else? Like if the seat, like for us, right? Like I don't know what our CPA was, like $5. Like so our thing converts like crazy. It's like $5 CPA, right? And or whatever, it's a $50 CPA. Like my mentality is like, how can I run this offer? How can I make this offer so I can pay $300 for a $5 cookbook customer, right? That's what I want. I want to be able to pay $500 or $300 for a $5 customer and make money, right? And so when you have that mentality, nobody else out there, everybody else coming in the space is like, oh, how can I lower ads? And you just come in over and you bulldoze over them, right? You're like, fuck off my ads, right? And then when you get them in, you build a relationship, you nurture it, and et cetera. And we'll talk about that later. And then, you look at your customers as a renewable financial resource. You take care of them, right? And so like how many of you live locally, there's a local gas station, they get X amount of money out of you every year, right? They get the gas, they get the snacks, they get the cookies, whatever, right? Same thing with McDonald's, right? There's a McDonald's down my street. I go to McDonald's. They get money out of every, all the time. Apple gets money out of me, like $2,000 to $5,000 every year. Netflix gets money out of me. Amazon gets money out of me, right? They're doing it right. They acquired me once and they're getting it, right? In our internet marketing space, it's all about get more clients, get more. There's zero thought put into keeping a customer, like fucking zero, right? It's like they're just disposable, right? As if there's like an endless stream of them, right? And so what ends up happening is like, because people don't solve this problem of keeping the customer, they always want to get more customers. They're always dealing with a problem and it's always chaos, right? What you should do after we go to 7-day fast start, the mentality will be get the customer, keep them, and then you'll get so many customers that you have to raise your prices, right? And then you get to a certain point where it's like I can't take on any more customers, I can't take on more customers. So like I had some
capacity problem.
Yeah, you have a capacity problem, you have a marketing problem, right? So everybody in our space has a marketing problem. So like I had this gut issue, right, for 2 years. Booked this guy, gastro doc. He's like booked 8 months, right? You don't see the best doctors out there, scavenging for clients and stuff like that, and so that's the other thing, right? And so all these things work holistically, right? And so when they all come together, they create like a really good business, really good business, like Robert said, your dream business, right? And this is coming from from somebody that used to buy, I used to buy like millions of leads from various CPA networks, and I would put them in email servers and promote offers, and made like $250,000 a month sending emails and stuff like that, burning leads instead of cultivating relationships. A lot of the stuff I talk about comes from all my fuck ups and mistakes I've made, because I learned the lessons the hard way, because I'd be like, man, if I didn't fuck that up, I probably wouldn't be here doing this right now. I'd be somewhere like on a private island, And so, yeah, that's why the game is all about acquisition, and you have to start thinking differently if you're going to beat the competition, right? If you're doing what everybody else is doing out there, you just get the same result, right? Same result. And that's what I see now happening too. It's like everybody's running the same offers. Everybody has the same model. One thing I want to say in my notes here, so I'm writing notes as I'm talking, and what I do is like a lot of stuff is subconscious, right? Because I've been doing it so long, and like I can't remember all the stuff, so it like just comes out, and so that's why I'm kind of like bouncing around. And this is what I do on our calls. The big problem we have in our space, right? Like you guys know what a webinar is. You guys know what a strategy call is, right? It's not a webinar, it's a pitch. And it's not a strategy call, it's a sales call, right? And the core issue that we have right now is that, they know what the sales process is, right? And if they know what the sales process is, there's massive sales resistance, right? And so it's like now that I'm kind of coming out, it's little out of the shadows, whatever, to Guru, every day I get like 10, 20 DMs on Facebook, and it's like, hey, how are you? I'm like, hey, what's up? Blah, 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 pitch, I'm like, oh God, and then it's like, same thing, right? And then when I see an ad, it's like free this, I'm like, that's not free, there's a catch there, right? Everybody knows that, right? And the people that don't are not that great of customers. And so you have to overcome this, right? And the sale resistance creeps up, it creeps up, it creeps up, it creeps up, and it starts weeding people out, right? But the only people the game doesn't weed out is the people that have this mentality of being able to pay to acquire more for a customer, right? Pay more for a customer. So like, how can you pay more for a customer? You have better economics, you have a better product, you have better retention, you have better ascension, you have everything, right? And so that's where a lot of that comes from. And so one of the big things is you'll notice after we start doing a lot of these calls, you'll notice all these little breakthroughs, right, in your business, and kind of you'll see it everywhere. Like you'll start to see that matrix, and you'll be like, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit, I see that, I see that, I see that, and it's like, it's gonna like change your life, right? But the real issue is like, sales conversions or sales resistance. And, this is manifesting all over. Like when people buy our book and they go into the upsell, I don't want to watch the upsell. I know it's an upsell, right? We get that a lot. When people, when I do all our sales call, right? And I'm really good. My closing rate's like 90%. Like I'm a fucking monster on sales, right? And it's like, I get it. It's like, is there a payment plan? Oh, why would you ask for a payment plan? Because they know it's there, right? And so it's like, it's always this thing. There's a sales resistance. And the reason is there's a sales resistance is they're fully aware of the sales process, right? And this thing happened in other industries, like the car industry. So for example, I buy a new car every like 6 to 12 months, right? And I go to the car dealership, and before the internet, I go to the car dealership and it's like, hey, what a car, it's fine. And it's like, they get me, right? And now it's like I go on Auto Trader or whatever, and I'm comparing. I know what everybody pays for. I know what people are leasing here. I know that. I go to the car dealership and I'm just like, just give me the car, let me test drive it, and what's the price, right? That's all I care about, right? There's nothing there. Like I'm aware of the sales process, right? And this is happening everywhere, right? And so in our space too, because there's so many people doing this, there's zero barrier to entry. Like, ClickFunnels is like, come in, build a funnel, right? These guys are, you come in here, I'll give you some templates. Yeah, come here, I'll give you a sales script, right? You come here, I'll give you some ads, right? Everybody's aware of the sales process, right? And then when everybody's aware of the sales process, there's massive sales resistance. And when there's massive sales resistance, it gets really hard. And that's why most of you guys are here, because it's like there's something attractive about what we're doing, right? And to kind of like solve this problem for you, because we solved it for ourselves. And so the biggest thing is like, it's like our philosophy is like, if we can solve the problem for ourselves, then we can solve the problem for you, hopefully in different markets, so you guys don't compete with us, that's a problem. But yeah, this is going to happen, right? And so there's this thing I have in my notes. You guys know about Moore's Law, right? Moore's Law is basically the transistors in the computer industry double every year, right? And I was watching this presentation by Chris Dixon, and he's one of the VCs over at Anderson Horowitz, right? The venture capital fund. Super rich guy. I think he's worth like billions, right? And like he has this thing, and he's talking about how like the transistors are changing, and they're extrapolating this data point over to crypto, right? And I was like, that's kind of funny, because it's like the rate of gurus in our space is doubling every year, right? And it's like, it's the same shit. It's like the rate of competition in this space is doubling. So I call it the moron's law instead of the Moore's Law, right? So more people are coming in, right? And then all the people come in, what's the first thing I'm gonna do? I wanna do the least amount of work. I just want to get the customer for, least amount of money. And I want to make the most amount of money doing work, And we call that concept delegating your thinking, right? Delegating your thinking. And so if you delegate your thinking to somebody, they're going to take advantage of you. And so when we went, when we were doing to our agency, tried hiring a bunch of different, ad agencies, they all sucked. We beat them, right? They literally had their campaigns, we had ours, our numbers were better. It's like, what the hell, right? Hired sales guys, wouldn't do follow-up, wouldn't do shit. Lost like $600,000-$700,000 on no follow-up, And so we learned all these lessons the hard way, and I learned all the lessons the hard way long before, working on any of this. And so yeah, this is all accumulation of this, and so like let's that's basically what it means to compete on economics. That's kind of the overview, and there's a lot of, I have like 200 pages of notes we're going to share with you guys, and really good stuff stuff you're not going to hear anywhere else. I can fucking guarantee you that you're not going to hear anywhere else.
Well, we've been doing calls just like the one we're doing right now for about 14 months, twice a week. I think we skipped like Christmas, maybe one call.
And I had to call 911 once. I had to like shut down the computer because I thought I was dying because I had a bad gut issue. We used to do 3 calls a week, so it's a lot more than that. It's about 150 calls. Yeah, so there's like 200 pages of notes.
Endless ideas. You guys are getting a nice taste for it right now. Yeah, but that's very good. That's competing on economics. And on that note, there's one thing that you've said is this idea of combining psychology and math. And I think the math part is very obvious. Like you've explained it, we get it, right? But what about the psychology? When you say that you're using psychology, what does that mean? Are you talking about, the copywriting and the VSLs, or what do you mean exactly by that?
It's well, how can I start? So first off, like I'm naturally good at it, right? And so I don't know if I can teach it to other people, but I'll try,
Screw it. Let's go off script and let's see what we can do.
So there's like, what I do is like when I look at offers, like I detach myself from like the experience, right? I'm not trying to like, I'm trying to like empathy, right? Like I detach myself mentally. I'm like, there's 2 people, right? There's me and there's the observer. Like, and what's the observer looking at the offer, right? And then it's like, what psychological effect does it have on it, right? So for example, like on our sales page, like I looked at that and, Robert was really kind of like tired of me because I'm like, it's taking a long time. So it's a lot of fucking work, right? But I'm like, no, if I scroll this, I'm going to think that. If I come here, I'm going to think I'm lying. If I do this, they're going to think that, right? And so one thing I operate on is like this, like a factor of like pure skepticism, right? So people come on the page and they don't like us. They don't trust us. They're mad at us. Like they it's just like shit. And so like everything I do, I think it's horrible. And that's why I overbuilt. Like, so like on our sales page, for example, I was like 1-800 number on top, right? Why? Very few people call it, right? But the thing is, if somebody sees a 1-800 number, it subconsciously tells them that, hey, these guys, I can reach them. Yeah, I can reach them, right? There. And then it's like, for example, like I have, one of the guys I work with, he has a book on credit repair for business, not credit, it's a business, how to get credit for business. Yeah, it's doing really well on Facebook, 100 sales a day. And, he does like, it's a free book, whatever. And then like in that book, I had to like we looked at it and I looked at it and it was like, a lot of people, when you have a free book, a lot of people are like, this is a scam. It's free. Why is it free, right? And it was like, I had to put there like, here's why it's free. And then you have to justify it, right? And then for us, like on ours, it's like, here's only why it's $5, right? And you have to justify it. So it's almost like you're anticipating people's reactions and then reacting to those reactions and your reaction to that reaction and so forth, architecting everything. So when they go through the process, right? At the end, they come out and then they're like, oh, here it is, right? And so, yeah, that's kind of it, right? And it's like what things have what effect on people and what do you say and how do you look, like optics, like how do you come across, what's the headline say, who does it attract, why that price? Is that price too good to be true? Is it a steal or is there a reason? What's the, like, for example, like on our page, like one thing is like if you scroll down on your phone, right, you have to have like the rule is like, 5 flicks of the thumb, you have to have a CTA, like, something to ask them to buy, right, to get their money. And I call it get their money because, I like that word. It's kind of funny, right? But it's like we offer a lot of value. I just like saying that, get their money, right, for whatever you're selling. And like you have to flick 5 thumbs, right? And it's like I know that psychologically speaking, like if I'm scrolling down through a page and I flick my thumb 7 times, I'm going to get tired, right? And it's like I don't want to click that. Where's that button? I want to buy, and then I got to scroll up, and then I kind of you lose me, right? And so like engagement, re-engagement. So that's kind of psychology, right? And that things and like how people move, right? And then having like what else is there? Like there's just a lot of it's hard for me to teach it. Really, I'll try. It's like I can.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. So you're effectively saying, it's about putting yourself in the shoes of the user and trying to get a feel for, well, what are they going to feel when they land here, and how can we sort of make sure that we engineer the process in a way that it should be engineered, so they're not landing here and having, the skepticism is squashed rather than amplified, so to speak.
Yeah, partially, yeah. Because the thing is, it's like you get their attention. Like the most people will give you something like half an attention, right? Like half a second of attention. And there's this thing called the forgetful hypothesis, right? If you Google it, you can see the info on it. But basically, it means like all the information you interact with in a day, you forget 40%, and next day you forget 40% of what you remember, and so forth until you remember very little. So it's like, when you're driving somewhere, you don't remember how the hell you got there, and you saw everything, but you don't remember it, right? And so, attention is at a premium online, right? And so, you guys think, so the funny thing is, like, you guys think you're competing with other marketers. You think that you're not. You're competing with like people running Facebook groups. You're competing with Facebook algorithm. You're competing with YouTube channels. You're competing with Instagram. You're competing with everybody. Everybody wants attention, right? Because if you don't get attention, you can't get the sale, right? And so it's like you're competing with all these things. And so you got to kind of that has to come first. Then the other thing we focus on is like this. I don't know if you have it in here or if we even talk about it in 7 Day Fast Start, but like the idea of microtransactions versus macro transactions, right?
Yeah, we have that.
We have that, yeah. So microtransactions are like, the transactions of value, feelings and all these things, which lead to macro transactions, right? So if you have a bunch of transactions where they're microtransactions, like, goodwill, like this whole call is a microtransaction, right?
Exactly. I was just going to say, like, we're having a transaction right now. Most people just think of it as money, right? But we're having a transaction right now. You guys are paying attention. You're giving us your time and your energy.
Which is really valuable, actually a lot more valuable than money, right? Because it's like time, you can't get more of it, right? So you do that, you architect a bunch of microtransactions. So what ends up happening is like when you have enough microtransactions, then people want to do macro transactions, which is give you money, right? And that's a good thing, yeah. And so yeah, let's continue. We're getting off track here because like we'll do more of these calls for you guys. But for now, we just got to get through the 7 Day Fast Start because it's kind of getting in the weeds here,
Oh yeah. There's a couple more things I think on this slide that are worth mentioning. We can maybe try to go through them a little bit faster. But one thing that I think everybody can relate to is this idea that a lot of people competing on claims, and we, like we're talking about here, we're competing on economics. So we're trying to compete on math, and others compete on claims. Can you just kind of briefly talk about that idea? Because I think it's very powerful, and everybody has seen it.
Yeah. So like one thing is like markets basically operate on claims, right? And so what ends up happening is like, this idea of predators, right? So let me, I'm actually not even looking at our notes as I'm talking, so actually there's a bunch of stuff. So there's this concept like, predators can travel far. So I watch a show called Mountain Men, right? So I'll get into these shows and I watch, I think like 9 seasons of it, right? So it's really good, by the way, you guys should watch it. So watch this show and like, there's all these predators, right? They're like, in nature, like wolves and stuff like that. And like, so they had this thing how, these wolves can like travel like 1,000 miles in 3 days, right, to go get food, right? And that's what makes them like an apex predator because they can go far, right? And I started thinking about this, and it was like, our offers, AOV allows them, average order value allows the offer to go far. Again, economics. So if I can spend like $200-$300 to get a $5 customer, I can go far, right? I can advertise on billboards. I can advertise like in different countries. I can advertise, in out of category places. I can advertise to people who may be interested but not really interested. Like I can go a lot of different places and advertise, right? And what it does, it allows you to go very far with your advertising and basically to get customers where other people can't get customers from, right? And so like what ends up happening is like in our space, there's finite amount of customers, right? And so what ends up happening is like at first, you come in and it's like some vanilla claim, start an online business, very innocent, right? It's like some people are like, yeah, I want to start an online business, right? They all kind of jump into it and it's fine, right? And that shit doesn't work anymore because now 10 people are like, start an online business, right? And so next guy's like, yo, make $1 million a business, right? And they're like, okay, great. And then like the claims keep increasing, right? And what ends up happening is like, imagine in nature, you have a pack of wolves, like they're predators, right? And like the resource, the food, right? The food there is not there. And they get really aggressive, right? They get really aggressive with each other. And so that's what's happening. The claims keep getting aggressive and aggressive and aggressive and aggressive. And then it gets to the point where you have a choice to make, right? So either you have to make a choice, either you're going to be aggressive, and kind of like fight with the savages, right? Or, you can leave the market, right? And typically it's like the, question of ethics or morals, right? It's like, are you going to lie, right? And then you see this in some of the, I'm not going to mention any names because we're recording this, but you see some of these guys, right? Who are like, 2-3 years ago were like, get clients type of vibe, right? And now they're like, become a millionaire type of vibe, right? And then next is going to be like, get rich doing nothing type of vibe, right? Because their claims keep going because it's like the market doesn't respond to that, right? And so they're competing on claims, right? And that's a problem because eventually the government steps in and, screws you up. Or basically what ends up happening is like your product can't, which is even worse actually, your product can't meet the claims, right? So it's like become a millionaire, that type of vibe doesn't work because like your product cannot actually deliver on the claims. And it's like just a bunch of shit, it's bullshit, right? And so you have a moral ethic, do you lie? or do you leave the market, right? But there's a third choice, which is basically competing economics, where you can architect that you can say, look, I can still say stuff right here that's okay, but then I make enough money back here and attract the right people into my tribe, and things just work out, right? And that's kind of like the thing, right? And so why do you see, and then so the basic idea is like, why do you see some ads for books and courses for a week, others for 5 years, right? And so this is a very common thing in our space. Like you'll see like an offer come in, hot for a week, hot for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and the guy in the offer is like, I'll teach you to build a 7-figure business, right? Or whatever, right? Fine. And then it's like, you don't see him again because he can't do it himself. And I know because I have like 3-4 of these guys hit me up privately, like, hey, what are you doing? Trying to figure it out, and that happens a lot. And so you never want to compete on claims because that's a losing proposition, because it ends up being people that compete on claims is basically at some point you're going to be asked to lie, right? You're going to be asked to be dishonest, And I know because I went through this shit 10 years ago. I've seen markets evolve, right? Like when we did ClickBank launches, right? So we were on ClickBank, and I have that record of all highest sales ever in one day on ClickBank, highest gravity. Me and Matt Basak did a launch, have like 2,200 gravity. Never been done since, right? I think we did like 20,000 customers in a week or something. Like it was ridiculous. And in that space, it was like a bunch of guys started, and it was nice. You do blogging. Hey, this guy does that. This guy does SEO. This guy does traffic, right? Kind of honor. We all promote each other. You make like $1 million a year. You do 1 or 2 launches. You're set, right? Then a bunch of guys came from the UK and they were like, fuck this. Let's just, up the claims. And then it's like they started the whole trend of, one-click button software, like push a button and click, make money, right? Claims went up and up and up and up, and then the market burnt out, and then I left. I was like, I can't do this because it's like I have to lie. I don't want to lie, And so every market experiences that. Like our market right now is on the uptick of that, and you can see it in various groups. You can see it in various posts. You can see it in various offers. Like people are increasingly making more aggressive claims, right? And so when you have aggressive claims, you can't really. You have to at some point, if you build your business on that pillar, you will be asked, to suffer your integrity and morals, ethics, and everything in order to feed yourself, and that's not good, and so you have to be aware of that. And when you have economics, then it's like, well, it doesn't matter what the claims are, you can keep rocking, and it's really nice.
Yeah, very good. The next topic is this idea of economics versus conversions, and I don't think we have to spend a ton of time on this, but it is important to mention this idea. So, can you speak to perhaps the importance of this, and maybe not getting too caught up in the conversions, and instead perhaps being more into the idea of economics?
Yeah, sure. So like again, like if you go on various copywriting forums, whatever, etc., a lot of people are very obsessed about conversions, right? Because that's basically the direct response, pillar, right? Basically conversions, converting customers to this and stuff, and that's fine, right? That's fine, but it's like, what does a conversion mean? Like I know a copywriter out there, and he's going around telling people, for every % I increase your conversions, you got to give me $1,000. I'm like, well, shit, I can lower your price to $1 and it'll increase your conversions by 50%. Give me 50 grand or whatever. And so that doesn't really work. It has to be attached to something, right? And so you don't want to get conversions. You want to get the right conversions, right? And so that's a big thing. And so it's like how people convert and stuff, and the way you say things can affect the conversion. So like what most people out there do, for example, is like they'll change the front end, right? Or they'll change the bump on the offer on a checkout page, or they'll change the price, and they're like, yeah, my conversions went up on the front end, but they're not looking at the fact they're making less money in the AOV and the people aren't buying the back end, right? And so there's a lot of testing done where it's like, if you take your bump on your checkout page and you can, you go from say $10 to $80 or whatever, or $50, your upsells go down in conversions, So there's this fine equilibrium you have to play with where the economics pan out, because at the end of the day, it's about making more money and not just getting more conversions, And so, like I said, like there's only so many ways like you can say the same thing in the market, right? Like get clients, lose weight, get rich, train your dog, whatever, right? And it's kind of like the same thing, because pretty much everybody kind of has the same similar model, right? But with economics, what's really interesting is that, like I said, like, for example, like our accelerator is like $6,500 now, right? We raised the price because like we don't have a marketing problem, we have a capacity problem. So we raised the price. So we're going to go to $8,000 soon, right? And, what I want to do with us is like I just want to put the whole thing into acquisition, right? Like let's just go all in on it and see what happens, right? And so it's like if you can put your 8K into the front end, nobody can compete with you. Like nobody can compete with you, And like so, for example, like I see some offers out there running, right, doing really well, and I'm like, they're competing in economics, they're not competing in conversions because their copies and they're great, right? But they're doing really well, and so. you have to figure out what you can sacrifice in there, right? And what that looks like to you. What's your long-term goal? Do you want to build a big business, small business, lifestyle business? That's why that question was really important. But conversions are just a small factor because the percentage sign has to be attached to something in order to convert something into something, right? It doesn't matter. And so, like I said, like most people, they want to increase the conversion of the book or whatever. It's far easier to just increase the price of the upsell. For example, in terms of conversions, right? Like our upsell right now is $197, right? If we take that upsell and we take it to 97, it's not going to convert twice as much at all. It might convert like a little bit more, but overall net loss will be higher, right? Now, if we go to 297, which we probably will, what ends up happening is like your conversions will go down by 25%, but then you'll gain 50%, right? So you have higher net. So conversions will be lower, higher net, right?
Right.
That's competing economics. And so it's like typically people think like lowering the price will actually be, it's not, because price is elastic, right? And so lowering the price like by half is not going to double your conversions twice as much.
Yeah, they just get obsessed with the wrong number. It's like you got to look at the whole thing. You can't just obsess over the conversion. You got to look at, okay, well, what's the net outcome of this change?
Yeah, exactly. Like what's the net outcome of the whole change in the funnel, in the AOV, right? And so nobody looks at that. So it's everybody's like, what's the CPA, right? Is my CPA lower? It's like, well, yeah, your CPA lower because you lower the price, but then you change this and then the whole thing doesn't work. It's like the math doesn't work out, right? So your CPA should always be equal to or lower than your AOV, right? My buddy Jay, like great marketer, really smart guy, he has this thing he says, and I like to give credit where credit is due for a lot of the ideas that I have. And this is his concept. And he said, the game is going to be in years to come based on who's better at losing money on the front end, right? Mm-hmm. And he does like 1,000 sales a day. He's doing like, he's doing like $120,000 a day in revenue. He's a beast, And I'm like, man, that's true, because everybody else is just like, hey, how can I make money today? Don't give a shit about tomorrow or whatever. Again, it goes back to the philosophy of the market is get more clients, not keep more clients. Like, why is everybody out getting them? Why can't you keep them? So yeah, that's economics and conversions, really big idea. What's next?
Economics calculator walkthrough. Should we do a little quick one?
Well, let me kind of give you some history on that, right? So when I ran my supplement company, I started a supplement company in 2008, right? And I remember I went to like BB&T and I got 2 credit cards. I'm gonna come up with these on credit cards and see how it goes. And if it doesn't, fuck it, right? So I did it. And I built this assumptive model, right? And the assumptive model is basically I assumed like how the math is going to play out, right? And typically I've done it for every single offer I've done the assumptive model, and it's always about 90% right, And the reason it's really important to the assumptive model is because it mathematically shows you where and how it's going to look, and how you're going to plot out the points on the whole path, and then what basically that's the the math component, right? And then when you look at it, then you zoom in and you're like, what's the psychological component, behavioral psychology here to make that happen, right? What's the thing I got to say, etc. And we'll talk about that later, on how to make your product and everything. But I'm going to get some water, and Robert can, you can walk us through this thing.
Absolutely. So let's do that. Let me find got so many things going on here. Here we go. Got it. We're going to give you guys a link to this. And then what you want to do is, if you want to use this, you pull it up, then you go to File, then you go to Make a Copy, and you can rename it if you'd like to. I'm kind of a neat freak, so it would really bother me if it was called Copy of AC Calculator. So you make a copy, and that's going to allow you to edit this thing. You just need a Gmail account. And then what you have here is kind of like a standard automatic clients type of funnel. So value vehicle, that's what we call, the book or the course or whatever that front-facing product is that you're selling. So all you do is you put in the price, and then if there's an add-on, like, we have a audiobook, for example, and then you can have a bump offer, and then you have your upsell 1 downsell, upsell 2, and upsell 2 downsell. And then you can go ahead and put your prices in here, and then this is really accurate, or we want it to be as accurate as possible, which means we have to deal in reality. That's another problem that I see people doing, is they're kind of living in this fantasy world where like, let's just ignore the fact that Stripe is going to grab 3% of my business. Well, no, you probably want to not ignore that so that you can make decisions that are actually going to benefit you and your business. So we try to put everything in here. Sales commission team, tech stack for the the softwares that you pay for and all that. But the idea is effectively that you put in the numbers for your funnel and the products that you'd like to sell. You put in your yearly revenue goal. So let's say you're trying to build a 7-figure. God, I'm starting to hate that word. Let's say you're trying to build $1 million a year business, right? You put in those numbers. You can put in the tech stack, and if you have a media buyer and so on, you can put that. And then you can also put, if you have a high ticket thing on the back end. And then what you want to go do is you've got these benchmark conversion rates. And look, they're going to vary a bit. Sometimes if you're in a B2C market or a B2B market, there's going to be some variance. What we find is the end result sort of ends up being on the same level of accuracy. But you have this kind of target conversion rate, right? Yeah, sorry. Here's the target conversion rate. Here's where you put in your conversion rate. So if I put in, if the target is 5 and I put in 6, then I'm in the green by 20%. If the target is 20 and I put in 15, then I'm in the red 25%. So you can just change this, right? You just put in your actual stats once you have them, and that's going to allow you to kind of see where you're how you're doing in this benchmark. And again, you don't want to get obsessed about this. Like, these are conversion rate numbers, right? As we just talked about, them in a vacuum, you don't want to care about that too much, okay? They're there, and if you see, if anything, all they're here for is to illuminate, potential opportunities for you to improve your funnel, right? But you don't want to get obsessed over the conversion rate alone. If things are working, your front end's, breaking even or making money or making, a slight loss, but you're banking on the back end, like, there's probably not a ton of things you have to do there, So don't get too obsessed with that. Then you can put your refund rate, and then you can put sort of a cost per click. Again, this is going to vary tremendously based on what sort of market you're in. I live in Poland, and my wife has a food blog. She was running Facebook ads getting 2-cent clicks in 2021. Can you believe that? And we're paying much more than that. So you can do that, and then you can put in the conversion rate for your high ticket offer, and then kind of a split for, full pay versus payment plan, and refunds and things like that. And then the idea is effectively for you to get a really good idea of, like, okay, here's what I'm dealing with. Here's how much each of these things is contributing to the average order value. Here's the average order value. So this is how much I can spend on advertising to acquire a customer. And then you also have the back end kick in. So total book buyer revenue. Let's see. Yeah. So this is where the back end kicks in, right? So the 61, that's as they go through the front end funnel. Let's say they buy a book, they buy upsell 1, they buy upsell 2. And on average, you throw 1,000 people in there, the average person spends $61. But then you also have a back-end high-ticket thing, like our accelerator, for example. Some people are going to join that, right? They want help with implementation. And as you add those two numbers together, you might end up with $105. So what Alan's saying is, why don't we take this number and we combine it with the back-end number? Let's take all $105 and throw it into ads so that we can afford to screw everybody over as far as economics goes. Let's be able to outspend everybody. And then we just got to figure out another product that we can make profit from. So what if we had like a $20 a month recurring program or a $97 a month recurring program, something like that, right? And then what you can see is, like, here's how many books you got to sell for your yearly goal, monthly goal, weekly goal, daily goal. And I do want to say one thing here. I've been in the position where I would look at some of the numbers that we're showing you on screen right now, and I would look at that and be like, I don't know how to do that. Like, how can I sell that many books? I don't understand how it's possible. Well, it's possible because it's a digital product and you're using advertising to sell it. It's incredibly scalable. And that's why like some people are kind of stuck in these lower numbers and they look at guys doing 7 figures, 8 figures, and it just seems impossible. But what they're missing is it's all basically automated, right? Once those systems are built, you've got a digital book and digital upsells, and then you got ads running to the sales page and the sales. Like, if you're spending $1,000 on ads or $100,000 on ads, that's the only difference. You might need a couple of more support staff because you're going to have a lot more customers, but the fulfillment doesn't change. The workload doesn't actually change. And that's how you're able to get to these numbers. So like if you would ask me like 3 years ago, hey, do you think you could sell 10,000 books? I'd be like, no, I don't know how to do that. And then on my first book that I launched, we ended up selling like 12,500 copies. And it's like, man, it wasn't that hard looking back on it, because it's you build this thing, right? And then you can just, keep it moving and scale it up, and it's all digitized. So and then you can put here traffic. So this is like how much you can spend per click, and then here we go even further with putting in the refund cost and the Stripe fees and all that. So there we go.
Yeah, this is great. Yeah. So one thing as far as economics go, like scroll up to the contribution. Like one thing right there on the left, right there. Yeah. So one thing I look at is like every little piece of the funnel has to contribute something to the back end, right? So like how much is the upsell one contributing? Like it's contributing $20, $30, $50 to the AOV. It's like I look at each component as like a contributor to the AOV, right? I don't look at it as like this like thing that's tangled up. It's like it has to live on its own, And so so basically we I've been running these assumptive models for like forever, right? And so we did it too, and it's like a lot of the clients we work with, we have them do this, and what ends up happening is like we have the assumptive model when they launch their offers, and then they come to us, and I'm like, okay, let's look what's going on, right? Okay, the upsell is not converting at this much, fix it. This is not converting at that much, fix it. This is converting really well, leave it alone, right? And so basically that's it, right? And so once you architect everything mathematically like this, it's not that hard, right? It's not that hard to really do it. And then it's like a total average value is 61, 32. That means like, on the front end, you can spend up to $60 to get a $5 customer. How many customers do you want to get, right? And that's basically the gist of economics and how the economics calculator works. Now, this is for people that bought the book, but I think we're going to go ahead and just, send you guys links after the call. You guys can use it and play with it and kind of start marinating on your own offers. On the bottom right, it says like ROAS. Go down, bottom right. We haven't fixed this in like a year and a half, and it's horrible. Like go down. See that? The last thing it says.
Yeah, I've been trying to figure it out. We got some help from one of our clients to do this. I still don't know what the ROAS 6 means, to be honest. But
yeah, I don't know what that means either. But yeah, that's basically the economics calculator, how it works. And so so basically we architect the model, and then we put the pieces on the model, and then we connect it all together in like fancy funnels, as you want to call them, or whatever. And then and then we put it out into the market, right? And then the cool thing is right there, it's like maximum allowable CPC. Like we can spend like if you're looking at the ads, you have these like boundaries, right? And so if you're looking at the ads, it's like your CPC in Facebook is like 11. If it's under 1148, you're okay. If it's over 1148, you're okay, danger zone, right? And then you figure out like how much do you want to make. It'll tell you how much you want to spend, how many books you got to sell, how many clients you got to get, what you have to do, and how you do it. And and that's it. And then it's just details in between, right? The details. So this is the math part, and then behavioral psychology is how to get people to do that. Like how do you get people to give you X amount on upsell 1, upsell 2, back end, and everything, right? And so there's a billion little details to each one of these steps that we'll share with you guys over time. Like a lot of little details,
Yeah. I don't necessarily want to jump into Q&A right now, but I do want to address a great question from Christine Robinson. She's saying right here, are you saying that your back-end product is $26? No, we're saying every person who buys the book ends up contributing $26 because of the back-end on average.
Yeah, that's on the low end. Like our closing rate now using...
Well, look, that's only for the full payment plan.
Oh, yeah.
So with the 2Pay and the 4Pay, and this is not necessarily what we have, but when we did the sheet, that's what we had. So in total, every person who buys the book is adding $70 to the average order value in the lifetime of the customer. It's not that the back end is $26 or $70.
Yeah, so if you're getting 1,000 books a day, and you're getting them under $61, that means your future revenue is $70,000 a day. That basically you can bank on that. If you're doing 100 books a day, which is really easy, and it's under 61 AOV, right? Because there's all average. That basically you're getting like $7,000 a day net profit. That's going to be realized in like a week.
Cha-ching.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's predictable math, predictable modeling, really, really strong. But let's continue because this call's going to go forever. We got a lot of other stuff.
Oh yeah. I think we need to speed up a little bit. So who the AC model works for and how to apply it, in a nutshell, it kind of works for everybody. What it is, as you guys understand by now, is this idea of having an acquisition funnel or an acquisition offer and then having a profit center on the back end, right? And that can be applied to anywhere. So this is from our book. We say that it's for entrepreneurs and freelancers and authors, coaches and consultants, influencers, content creators, professional service providers, small businesses. Just kind of to be honest, it's kind of an all-inclusive list, but it really, like for most businesses, you can take this model, you have an acquisition offer, then you have an awareness bridge, and then you sell something else on the back end where you make your profit. So I don't know if you want to go into more about this, Alan, but if you do, feel free. Otherwise, we'll go to the next slide.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically, it is what it is. Yeah.
It is what it is. The next slide is much better. The thing that's on the next slide is something which is complete opposite of what you're going to hear from everybody else in the market. And what makes the AC model work, and full credit to Alan for most of these ideas, but especially this one, is and it took him a while to like kind of get me over to the side, because I've been kind of brainwashed by the one funnel away kind of language which is out there in the marketplace. We've all heard it, right? I'm part of the problem when I'm putting out a book called 2-Hour Agency, right? But Alan, talk to us about this idea of complexity versus simplicity, and how important it is to be able to manage complexity, and instead of just trying to build a business that's as simple as possible.
Yeah, and so how can I start? Business is ultimately about solving problems, right? If you really boil it down to what it is, it's like we're solving problems for each other, right? All the time, right? We're serving each other. And so like, if you go get food at McDonald's, people there are solving your problem. The owner is solving your problem. He's ordering the food, you're getting a burger, right? Anywhere you go, anywhere you do, whatever you do, some people solving problem, right? And the thing is, like, problem solving is inherently complex, right? It's not simple, right? There's a lot of complexity going on. And the appeal of internet marketing, making money online, comes in the fact that there's simplicity, because it removes the friction, right?
You can sit in your underwear on your laptop.
Yeah, you don't have to do anything, right? You don't have to do anything to make money online. It's like you just chill there, right? And so that basically is a simple thing. But if you look at nature, right, like complex organisms eat simple organisms, right? So if you look at, for example, fish eat worms, birds eat fish, we eat the birds, right? So complex organisms always eat simple organisms. So I saw this article somewhere, I can't remember, but it went something like, it talked about like how societies were formed, right? And it said like how complex societies were basically formed because it allowed them to, when they go to war, they can win, And so the big thing to take away that I got from there is like, well, if we have something complex, it's gonna eat simple, right? Simple organisms. And so that's why, like, Apple acquires a new company, like I think every week now. Every week they acquire a new company, from what I read, right? Like Microsoft acquired.
Walmart moves into town, see ya to all the mom and pop shops.
Yeah, exactly. Walmart moves into town. Amazon comes into your market. They buy Whole Foods. You're done, right? So it's like complexity always eats simplicity, right? So in like a market, like in any market you go into, any company, any business that has complexity and they can manage complexity will beat people with simplicity, right? And so everybody here is always wants the simplicity, the 3 steps. Do this, do that, but it's like a really flawed model, because like people with complexity always organisms that are complex always eat organisms that are very simple. So like if aliens came here, right, they would beat us because they solve the complexity of space travel, right? So if they can solve everything we can't solve, right? And they can basically, it's done, right? And so same thing with humans, like when they move into a territory, we kind of like become the apex predator, because, our brains allow us to solve the most complex things, like, food, shelter, we can grow food, we can survive, we can think, we can hunt, we can do a lot of stuff, right? And so this idea, one funnel away, which is fine, I think there's a place for that for like people, to get them going in the right direction.
And like we said too, sorry to interrupt you, but as we said in the very beginning, first you build a $1 business, a $5, $10, so there's definitely something to be said for simplicity. But what Alan's saying is like, man, if you're really trying to go for it, eventually you have to embrace complexity and not be stuck in this like, okay, I got to have the simplest solution possible. Go ahead.
Yeah, so like complex funnels, eat simple funnels. That's a simple thing, right? So like our thing is like
that quote.
Yeah. So the new,
we should put that on a t-shirt.
Yeah, complexfunnels, .com. So it's a complex funnel, eat simple funnel. So like, for example, like our members area is custom, right? And like it changes. So like based on who bought what, it changes, And like, so I went as far as like, years ago doing like upsells based on zip codes. Like, so if you live in like a super expensive zip code, you get a different upsell than you would do in like a, poor zip code, whatever, right? And then there's like, gender-based upsell. So nobody does that shit. So women buy differently than men buy, like, et cetera. And so men buy differently when they respond differently, right? So you have like, if there's a women's buying, you detect the name and you present that upsell differently, right? And so that's complexity, right? And then you have higher conversions. If a guy buys, you have higher conversions than if, funnels based on countries, geos, what time of the night they buy, like all these different factors, right? So, but basically what I'm saying is that complexity will always eat simplicity in a market, right? And so everybody wants simplicity. Everyone wants the 3 steps, the 2 steps, the 1 step, one video, one presentation to do something, etc. And, and the reality is like it never works. It never works because eventually the people that get organized, that have complexity, they beat people that, thrive on simplicity, and then simplicity is basically pushed out of the market, and, you can't operate. So you really have to embrace getting really good at managing complexity,
Yeah, I think that's a key to it, because as we've talked about this concept, on our accelerator calls, it's become, it's evolved a little bit and refined and so on. But I think the key here is like being able to manage complexity. The way that you put that, I think, is very important, because you don't want to necessarily optimize for complexity in the sense like your goal is not to make your stuff more complex. Your goal is to make your stuff, your marketing and your business more capable. And that typically comes with complexity. So then it's about being able to manage the complexity to make your stuff more capable. So what Alan's saying, if you log into our membership area right now, we're actually rehauling that and making it even better. But if you've bought our Upsell 1, then you're going to see the link to go watch Upsell 1 in the membership area. If you didn't buy Upsell 1, you're going to see a link to go buy Upsell 1, and it's going to open up a pop-up, and it's going to have a one-click upsell, like a one-click purchase mechanism to allow you to purchase that. And I do not in any way try to come off as like anti-ClickFunnels. I'm a big fan of ClickFunnels, but you can't do that with ClickFunnels, right? So we've had to go out and find other systems that allow for complexity, that allow us to make our business more capable, and with that comes complexity, and then being able to manage that.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's do it. Next one, because I think we're going to try to like hit 2 hours with this and call it a day. So let's go to the next one.
Yeah, we might have to cut the Q&A. We'll see how we go. But talk to us about this, the path of least resistance. We've heard this term before, but how does it sort of play into this idea of, if you default to simplicity, it's kind of linked with this idea of the path of least resistance.
So human beings like hate to expand energy, right? That's kind of their thing. They hate to expand energy, and what ends up happening is like because of this like desire not to expand energy, they always default to the path of least resistance, right? So the thing is like trying to build a funnel that has 2 steps to make you 7 figures or whatever you want. That's path of least resistance. But what ends up happening is like the path of least resistance tends to always lead to the path of most resistance later on. So short-term thinking kills long-term thinking. And so basically everybody in your market out there is basically path of least resistance. So you have to be really aware of it and not to do it. It's a big idea. Yeah.
Yep.
And yeah, you get average results basically. So everyone wants to simplify. If you follow path of least resistance, you get average results. And so if everybody does the same thing, they get the same result. Basically, like right now, if you're not where you want to be in life or business, you on some level follow the path of least resistance,
Very likely. So as far as this idea goes of what makes the AC model work, talk to us about this idea of removing the luck factor and the X factor. We talked about this obviously as we put it together, and I think it's very important. It's kind of a great equalizer, we like to call it. So what do we mean by that?
Yeah, so like removes the luck factor. So it's like basically like a lot of guys out there get lucky and then they attribute their success to their luck, right? So for example, like we have a guy.
Well, rather they don't attribute it to the luck. They think it's them.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So we have a guy that came into our accelerator in a market, right? I'm not going to kind of put his shit out there because I don't want people competing with him, but he had this offer, makes $350,000 a year, right? And it's like, I thought it was going to be like this sick offer, this great offer and all this stuff, and I'm like thinking, man, this is good. And I look at it and it was like the worst offer in the world. Like, I mean, it looked like it was built in like 98. It was just horrible, right? He got really lucky, right? And so a lot of people out there, like for example, teaching webinars or whatever, it's great timing, right? Great timing, right? Like if in 2016 you put up any type of webinar with quote or free training, like, you would do well, right? So great timing. And so we want to remove the luck factor, right? Because you can't account for that. And then you want to remove the X factor because the X factor is like something that you have inherently, like, that lets you do things that other people can't do, right? That you can't replicate. So for example, when I did a lot of consulting, right? Like it was a lot of webinar stuff, right? And, a lot of the webinar stuff, and I noticed like I would build a webinar, it'd be like a great webinar, and some webinars would crush it, and other webinars would kind of do okay. And I'd be like, well, what's the difference here? And I realized it has all to do with the person being able to pitch. Like if somebody can basically come there and get on the screen and pitch, do their thing, they're gonna crush it, right? But if somebody didn't have that X factor, they can't pitch, they can't do well, right? And so a lot of guys out there kind of running around as gurus, they have these two things, the luck factor. One, they got lucky when things were really good, and then they have the X factor, like be it, like being great on camera, being great on whatever. But then it's like you can't really replicate that because you don't have that, And so it's like, how do you operate on a model that, doesn't require luck or the X factor, And how do you make it work? And then it just goes back to the math, And so that's what that is. And so whenever you're, Eben Pagan years ago said it's like, you have to be smart enough when you realize when you're getting lucky. And I got lucky a lot of times, there was luck. I thought it was me, but it wasn't. It was luck, it was just good timing, and then the X factor too. And, over the years, I learned how to kind of like mitigate that, but it's a huge component in success, and then a lot of people attribute the luck factor and the X factor, to the reason they're successful in their model, and they can go teach it. And then it's like when you go do it, it's like, why can't I do it? And it's like, well, you're not doing something, right? I don't know what that something is because, hey, you're not lucky, and it's like you don't have the X factor, right? And so those two things play against you. And so like the key is like to just kick them out, not even have them in the consideration at all.
Yep, and that's why it works to do low ticket thing. Next up, we kind of talked about this, so I don't want to spend a lot of time on this either, but the core difference between this model and others is the customer, as Alan said before, they willingly give you money versus pushing emotional buttons. And the idea here is, we're very upfront about the value that we give, and then we actually try to give more, but it's $5, right? People are usually willingly giving up $5 when you put, this was a funny comment somebody posted on our ad the other day. It's like somebody ran our sales letter through a word count thing, and they were like, this thing is 60,000 words. So it's like, we put a lot of work into it, and then they see that, but there's an exchange of, there's a transaction here, a financial transaction. They give us money, and then they get the book in return. But if you have to go with the webinar thing, then you have to push emotional buttons, and you have to like trick people onto the webinar, and then pretend that it's not a sales pitch, but it's a sales pitch, and then you're pushing emotional buttons, and then eventually you get the $997 offer at the end, and it's like the core of it is completely different. It's an honest transaction versus like, hey, let me try to like emotionally get you and kind of push you along and kind of coerce you to do this thing, and then eventually you end up buying, but it's like it's not really a pleasant experience. And that's why, again, we don't want to hate on webinars because there's nothing necessarily wrong with them, and attention and isolation, as we like to call it, is important to make a sale, but there's a lot of like trickery around it, right? And this model doesn't have that. So
yeah, and the thing is, like, also like on a lot of these webinars, I think like there's two schools of thought. Like, and I like webinars. I think they have a place. They just have to be done right.
Yeah.
It's like either they have a high like 30% refund rate, or then they don't give refunds to people. They do this bullshit where it's like, we guarantee we'll work with you or some shit like that. And like people are like, fuck. So it's like there's a lot of that happening. But yeah, I don't know if you talk about this basically like solution problem model, but like we operate on that. And yeah, I think we'll talk about it in another.
Yeah, it's in another video.
Yeah, another video. Yeah, we don't want to kind of like we have a lot of slides to go over, so it's like I'm just trying to kind of like pack it in. So it's like these things can go forever, So, but yeah, so let's keep going, Robert. Let's keep it tight, and then we'll cover everything in the other days of 7-Day Fast Start.
Yeah, talk to us about the danger of offering things for free, and free book and free webinar.
So free thing is interesting, right? Because it's like a crotch, right? So like when I see somebody doing like something for free, like free book, free webinar, free whatever, like the first thing I think about is like this person sucks at marketing and they don't know how to sell this shit, right? Because they're using the word free. Because hey, it's like who wouldn't want free, right? Free was fine once upon a time ago, like when internet was young, free newsletter and stuff like that. But the problem with free now is like whenever somebody comes to your process or funnel with the word anchor free, you have like what's called a non-transactional relationship, right? And so basically it's like I got this thing for free. And and therefore getting money out of them later is really hard, right? You want to basically establish like a transactional relationship with your customer base, and so like if you keep constantly giving stuff for free, but then you don't really condition them to buy stuff from you, like pull out the wallet, buy from you, then when it comes time for you to ask for money and like sell stuff, there's this massive resistance because now there's this contrast, right? Where it's like, hey, you gave me all this stuff for free. Like I thought we were friends. Why do you want to charge me for this, right? And because you gave me all this stuff for free, I don't really value paying you, right? And so a lot of these like book offers, you'll see doing a free book, free shipping, stuff like that. The reason they're doing it is they see ClickFunnels doing it. The reason ClickFunnels can do it because they have like $100 million in revenue of software to dump into those books to acquire them to do their stuff, right? And so they're gonna, they can do that, right? But like average people can't. So they're like, I'm gonna do a free book. They go print a book, they ship the book. It's like, $10, $20, whatever. And then they're not realizing they're just anchoring like a non-transactional relationship in the whole process. And then it's like, when it comes time to, hey, let's talk, let's do a call, let's buy something. Yeah, no, this was free, and it's like the other problem with free, like nobody really values free. Like nobody reads the free book. I mean, like I got a lot of free stuff to read and I never read it. Like free newsletters, I never look at them. Free Facebook groups, I don't really like, I'm not really active in. It's like I don't value free because I don't have any emotional investment in it. I don't have any financial investment. I don't have any investment. It's just like, I don't have to do anything. It's like free, right? And so like a lot of people will offer free. I just see shitty marketing. Basically, what that tells me is like I can't sell. I don't know how to sell, right? And that's
you're setting the tone for the relationship too. And like my wife, she has this Instagram account. Like I was mentioning before, she has a food blog. She has like 11,000 followers. Blah blah blah. She gets like maybe 1,500 views on a Instagram story. And she does not have this kind of relationship of like DM me and like swipe up and blah blah blah. Like she she's not a marketer. Like she hasn't done it right in that respect, and she doesn't really have anything to sell on her food blog. So it was literally just she's doing it right in the sense of like she just posts content. But then now I'm helping her do an offer using the AC model. And I'm like, okay, well, you got the book. Now let's go. You've got an audience. Let's go out there and get some free, get some testimonials for this thing. So I give her the post. I'm like, here, take this image, post it in your stories, and just have people DM you the word for the book. And then you'll send them the book, and they'll send you a review of the book, and then you can put it on your sales page. So we posted right last Saturday. It's up for 24 hours. She gets like the 1,500 views or whatever. She gets one person to reply to her. And I'm like, I know exactly why. You don't have this kind of relationship with them, And so they're not used to that. The culture was set in a very different tone with our audience. They're not used to swiping up or DMing her or giving her money. So that can be very damaging long term, right? And so this is why on the next slide, we talk about how we charge $5 to $10 or to $100 or whatever, not just to cover our ad cost, but also it's a different type of relationship. It is, like Alan said, it's a transactional relationship versus a non-transactional relationship. And it's set from the start, and it's very, very important as that plays out over the long term. It's like, are you used to paying us money, or are you used to just coming to us for free stuff?
Yeah. And you can, like, once that like free relationship is built, really, really hard to go from non-transactional to like really hard to like condition them to give you money. But they'll give money to other people just fine, right? Just not you, and that's a problem, right?
Right.
And so that's that. Let's do the next slide after this.
Yeah, and this is just kind of some fun stuff, just some fun facts about what actually happens when you do this kind of low ticket offer. It's like there's a lot of side benefits that people don't consider. Branding. So when we ran ads on YouTube, all of a sudden, for some reason, running ads on YouTube, everybody starts to recognize you, or like people knew who I was after like just 2 weeks on YouTube versus Facebook. I don't know why that happens. But because of the volume, you get branding, you get followers, you get a lot of customers, status kind of tied to all this, right? Talk to us, Alan, about the faster cash conversion cycle. I think this is very, very important because if people were to go out there and sell $1,000, $2,000 product, in order to actually make that sale, they have to put maybe $1,000 on the line to do a test. But if you're selling something for $5, it's a different story.
Yeah, so it's a big one, right? So like one of the things about running webinars or anything like high ticket, like, like strategy sessions or like, $1,000 webinars or whatever, the issue is like that, you put money out there and typically you have to put like, you have 5X, right? Or whatever the product is. So like if it's $1,000 webinar, you got to put $5,000 out there to see if it's going to really work, right? And then you wait, and then it's like it works, maybe it doesn't work, whatever. And then it's like you're optimizing. So it's like, cash coming back, it's very slow. And so for you to optimize, like, you put $5,000 out, you run it over a month, you can optimize once a month. But like for us, it's like, I think our CPAs are now like $5, right, for our book. So it's like literally on some campaigns very low, but it's like, we put $100 and we get like, 10 sales, whatever, right? And we know if it's going to work or not. We know what works, and we can test something else. We put $100. It's like, oh, this is working. This is not working. Like, we can test our ads. We know if the ad is going to work. With the webinar, high ticket stuff, like you put it out there, and it's like you have no idea if the ad works, if it's a webinar, you have no idea what doesn't work. Like you have no idea. And it's like you have to put a whole lot of money to kind of make it work, right? And so that's the luck factor back at play, right? Whereas with what we got, it's like you put it out there, and the thing is like we don't even like we're very profitable. So it's like if we put money out there, then it's like money comes back, and so it's like we're not even losing anything, and we know very well.
Yeah, and I think this is a bigger point than a lot of people realize, because the truth is like kind of, especially if you're new to it or if it's the first time you're doing this kind of a business, it's just you're spending money and it's like a bit of an emotional roller coaster. So faster cash conversion cycle, you can spend $10, $20, $30, and you're actually going to see a return on that versus having to spend like hundreds of dollars. Like one of our clients who just joined us in the accelerator, he was spending $500 just to get on the phone with somebody. And it's like, man, that's not fun. That's not good. So ad network friendly, they love that we have this transactional relationship and there's a good customer experience. So actually it's very important that your sales page doesn't suck, because we had some technical glitch with ours and Facebook like rejected the ad. We fixed it and it came back up. Then the fact that you're actually offering something useful for, with $5 quote unquote risk, right? So to pay $5 for our book is not very risky. It's not a huge opportunity cost, which is on the next line here. Opportunity cost is simply this idea, right? If you spend $1,000 with you, that means they can't spend $1,000 somewhere else, right? But with $5 for most people, it doesn't really change their finances at all, right? So it's very, very low risk, but they're actually getting something useful. Again, this is a product. It's not just a marketing gimmick, right? The book, you get all the bonuses. There's useful stuff there. It's not just like a webinar where you kind of come on and then there's, trickery going on and so on and so forth. Then we have this idea of granular scaling. So again, because of the fact that the product is priced relatively low, it means when you're scaling up, you don't have to go from like $1,000 to $2,000 in order to see the results. Like you can go from spending $50 to $100 and you're going to see a difference in results. And again, I think only the people who have actually gone through this see the benefit and feel the benefit of being able to do it this way versus having to put a lot of money on the line. Because I'll tell you guys, like it is a bit of a emotional roller coaster to run ads. I don't care how much money you have. It's a bit of a emotional roller coaster. And the fact that you can spend a little bit of money, see it come back, spend a little bit more, see it come back, spend a little bit more, see it come back. That's comforting, as opposed to like, here's $5,000. Let's hope that something good happens. Chris says in the chat, huge benefit right there. Very, 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 very huge benefit. So the last one says you can start with no budget. Well, that depends, right? You can start with a very low budget, or you can do what I did, which I'm going to teach you in one of the days here in the 7-day fast start, where you do an organic launch, you bring in a little bit of capital, and then you use that to fund your ads. So that's it on the side benefits of low ticket sales, how the model works. So this is about primary profit center versus primary driver of the business. So we kind of touched on this before, to be honest. As you guys remember, we walked through the economic spreadsheet, and we were kind of saying that, hey, what if we took the high ticket, instead of treating that as a profit center, why don't we turn that into a driver of the business? So why don't we take, it's the same idea, right? How do we take, in our case, how do we take the high ticket, and instead of using that money, that extra $50 per customer or whatever, use it for profits? What if instead of doing that, instead of taking that profit out, what if we put it back into advertising and turned it into a sort of a driver of the business? So that's what this idea is about, and this is very important. So then you just figure out other ways of making a profit. Okay. How the model works. We're speeding up a little bit. I hope you guys are okay with that. What's up? Okay, no worries. I'm speeding up a little bit here, Alan, because we've been talking for a while, and we got a lot of things to share. Yeah, but you know what's interesting? I'm looking at the numbers right now, and the numbers are the same as when we started. So I don't know who else can talk for 2 hours except for Alan Sultanic, and people stay with 0% drop off. But hey, I think that says something about we must be doing something right. Alan, do you want to talk about this? Should I talk about this? This whole idea of visitor. This is another, I think, really big takeaway from the 2-hour agency offer, where I'll set it up and then you explain it. We assumed incorrectly that just because somebody buys a book from you, that they're willing to buy a high ticket thing from you. And maybe you can expand on that and why that's perhaps not the case.
Yeah, so everybody out there, like their model is like, visitor, lead, customer, client. That's the natural ascension model, right? Like basically like you get a customer and magically they become a client, right? And so they basically do that. The reason that works, well, let me rephrase. The reason there's an illusion of that working out there is because they use a filtering model, right? And so like the filtering model with strategy calls and webinars and everything basically means like you get 1,000 people in and you filter, right? So it's like you're filtering for who you want. Basically you're filtering and you ask that question, how much money do you make a year, right? How much money do you have to invest? And so it's like if you put like very little money, they're not going to call you, right? And I'm sure some of you guys have been in that position, And so that's how the model works. And then basically out of the people that do have a little bit of money, you call them and you sell them, right? And so we use a nurturing model. We don't use the filtering model. So for us, it's like you have a visitor, ad on Facebook, whatever, and that person becomes a lead. They come on the page, they become a customer, they buy your $5 book or whatever, or a course, whatever you sell. And then what we do is we default them back to the lead, because like what I realize is like after they become a customer, they're still skeptical. They don't really like us all that much more, and they probably bought because they have a good refund policy. And there's a bunch of screenshots, so they're giving us the benefit of a doubt, right? So they're thinking like these guys must be full of shit, but I'll give it a shot anyway. It looks good, And so they come in and they're basically like a lead, and then from there we have to nurture them to becoming a client, right? And so there's this like gap where most people use the filtering model, which is like customer, filter, and then filter the clients, and there's an illusion of it working. But what ends up happening is like you're filtering out a shit ton of people who are really good, right? And so what we found was that if you nurture people, so if you use the filtering model, let's say you get like 1,000 customers that you filter out, you get down to 50, and you close 5. If you're a nurturing model, you get 1,000, you're nurturing 1,000, you can get like 30. You can get 30 out of it. That's high ticket clients, because not everybody's ready to give you a shit ton of money right up front. And so there's this philosophy I use when I sell and when I teach our guys in Accelerator, is that every time you get somebody to give you $5,000 to $10,000, what you're at the same time asking them to do is not to go buy something else, right? So like if somebody comes to us and they give us $5,000 to $10,000 for our stuff, that person could have bought a MacBook Pro, taken a vacation, could have upgraded their car, could have done all lot of stuff, right? They could have done like a billion other things, except they gave you money for something intangible that it's like they can't even touch or feel, and they get the results in the future. Really hard, right? And so most of the people out there, they're filtering, right? And so a lot of these get clients guys out there, they're just like filtering model, right? And it's like a brute force approach, and it really sucks. Whereas like we take a different approach. We have a visitor, customer becomes a customer, and we just default him back to a lead. And we're like, what, this guy doesn't really like us. They don't know us. They don't know shit about us. The relationship just starts, and we go from lead, we nurture, we go to client. And so like when you have that, it's like, and see, like we have somebody here, Christine, somebody here, I can't pronounce the name, but it's like she says, I have a filter on my booking system. Yeah. And that's a problem. Everybody else has the filter, because that's what we call a standard industry model. They're all like filtering, right? And you only talk to the people. But I can tell you how many times I talk to people basically how much, if you're going to filter, you at least do it right. So instead of asking them how much money have you invested, ask how much money, how much money you have, how much money do you make a year? And then they'll give you a better indicator. They'll be honest. And a lot of times when you ask people how much money they got, they're lying to you. They don't want to tell you. And even if they got a lot of money, they don't want to tell you. So yeah, most people basically filter. And then, of course, what do you got on, in the ads? Oh, look how many customers and clients we got. It's like, well, how many did you fuck up? It's like, and that's the thing that goes back to the whole philosophy. It's like, why does everybody need more clients all the time? Because they can't keep them. They're horrible at keeping them, And like one of the things is like, look at you guys, you've been here hour and 45 minutes listening to us talk, right? In our accelerator, we have people coming in for 15 months straight, every damn call twice a week. Is because this is our process right here of nurturing, and so we'll teach you how to do this too. But that's a whole different beast, I don't want to unpack it. But yeah, basically that's the model. Like you want to basically nurture, they default to a lead and they go up to a client. So when you treat it like this, you get a lot more clients. Instead of getting 5, you're getting like 30 to 50, right? And they also willingly give you money. That's part of the process where they willingly give you money.
Yeah, and I'll just add one point to this. And so for me, I'll say that the big sort of realization here is just from a mental aspect or just the way that you think about them. If you treat them as already a customer, you're kind of assuming that, oh, they've bought from me, they know me, they like me, they trust me, they're willing to buy from me again. But if you treat them as a lead, you're going to go through the sales process properly. And that's the big difference. So it's just the way that you approach it. If you assume that just because they bought a $5 book from you, that they're going to buy all this other stuff because they know, like, and trust you and so on, and you're not going to get the result. But if you treat them as a lead, you will follow through with the sales process the way that a sales process should be. And so that's been big. Yeah.
And
Cool.
the other thing
Yeah.
is like when you go through one of the more things, like when you go through the standard filtering model that everybody else uses, what ends up happening is you get a lot of resistance because they know what a strategy call is. They know what you're trying to do on that in the call booking page. They know all this shit, right? And they're like fighting you. They're kind of like they don't want to go through the process, but then they still go through it. And it's this weirdly weird conversation, where it's like for us, it's like when people come to our calls, it's like a formality, right? They're like, how much? And can I work with you? That's really the conversation. Basically, like, here's my thing. What do you think? Can you help me out? And let's talk price. That's the conversation. There's no selling. There's no convincing. There's no manipulating. There's none of that. It's just basically, and my closing rate's like 90%. 90%. I shit you not. And it's like happy customers. Like our community of like our private clients, they all know each other. They're all friends. Like very transparent. Very transparent. And it's like it's cool. Whereas the filtering model, and we tried a filtering model with the 2-hour agency. It didn't really work. Like shitty people. It wasn't good. Like the leads in the back weren't happy. Like not enthusiastic. It was like really a different animal. And it wasn't good. But let's continue before we stretch this call into 4 hours.
Yeah, and we don't really have to go into this much. It's on the sales page, and you guys kind of get the idea. But there's two phases: acquisition phase and the profit phase. Typically, there's a value vehicle, like we like to call it. Book, course, template, script, paid community report, physical product, software, app, process, challenges. I've seen a lot: discount clubs, gift cards, that kind of stuff. Then you got 1 or 2 or 3 upsells. Hopefully, you're throwing your ads out there, breaking even, and then you go to the right side of the screen here over to the profit phase, where we call them profit zones. There's recurring programs and software. Of course, it's going to depend on what market you are and what opportunities are available. And there's coaching and consulting, kind of done with you stuff. And then there's done for you services and the fractional executive. Instead of having a full-time CMO, you could have somebody kind of on demand, a couple of hours a month kind of thing. And how the model works. So just to build on that, like the front end funnel, this is, we kind of covered this in the spreadsheet now that I think about it, so we don't really have to touch on this much, but you'd figure out your numbers here from the pricing and the conversion rates. So when I put 100% on the value vehicle, by the way, that's like out of all the people that buy it, 100% of people buy it. So the contribution from the book would be $5. Then you could have an audiobook, upsell 1, upsell 2, and average order value would be $60, and that's kind of going to be your target CPA. Where the model works. So it works where there are humans exchanging value. So Alan, maybe you can talk about this idea of mega structures that you like to call it, and how there's a lot of leverage that comes with those mega structures.
Yeah, so like societal mega structures, YouTube, Facebook, Google, etc. They bring us together, right? And basically, like if you're an organizer or aggregator, you can make a lot of money, and that's why they make a lot of money. And so basically, you can leverage, right? So you basically want to build your offer into the mega structure. So the guys I know that make the most amount of money, like they specialize. Like, so for example, they run all their offers on Google. Then there's guys that run all their offers on YouTube. Then there's guys that run all their offers on Facebook, right? But they basically bake in the offer into the mega structure, right? And that gives them the highest leverage because it's very in sync with their the ecosystem they work in, right? Whereas like a lot of guys traditionally, they'll go build a funnel or whatever, and then they're out there like, trying on YouTube, try Facebook, try Google, they're trying everywhere, right? And it just doesn't work. It's because of this. And so, mega structures are really important, and there's a lot of leverage, like, so I know a bunch of guys doing like, 30 to 150,000 a day on YouTube right now, huge thing, and it's where basically humans exchange value, right? And so value exchange is like in a sense of, they create content, etc. There's a lot of movement and traction, and you can tap into it, So for example, like TV is a mega structure, like our society is a mega structure, but what mega structures can you tap into, give you the highest leverage? And so like I have a buddy now, he's doing a webinar. There's a lot of joint ventures, right? And I introduced him to a lot of people, and I just told him, like, man, you just need one joint venture partner. That's it. And it's called YouTube. Go get it. And like, so he's now going on YouTube, and like, he's basically scaling the hell out of it, right? And so that works really well, And so those are mega structures.
Fantastic. When the model works, so you'll find this in many different areas of your life, but typically there's some kind of pendulum swing where, some companies might start automating a lot. And then all of a sudden, because of the automation, they're more cost effective and they're doing better than everybody else. But then they lose that human touch, right? And so the pendulum has swung all the way over to the automation side. And this company is very, very cost effective, but they've completely lost the human touch. Their customer service sucks, and yada, yada, yada. So then there's an opportunity now to become more customer focused. Going back a little bit to the roots and being able to take care of your customers and having really sort of not having one of those annoying, press number 3 to talk to an agent, and just having a human being there. The pendulum swings in different areas of our life and different types of businesses and so on. And we find the same with these kind of high ticket and low ticket offers. The pendulum kind of swings, right? And ultimately, like what we're selling, how to get clients, that's never going to go away. So the outcome is never going to go away. It's more about the mechanism of how to deliver on that might change depending on where that pendulum is. So businesses are always going to need customers, and they're always going to want to know, what are the latest tactics? What are the latest strategies? How can I get more customers to my business? That's never going to go away. It's evergreen. But the pendulum might swing. So there's a lot of high ticket, or there has been a lot of high ticket in the last 5 years maybe. And so the market's kind of like saturated on that front. So that's kind of, the next slide here is it's based on market saturation. So Alan kind of, this is based on his experience and so on, but 5 to 7 years is kind of a normal cycle. And I guess, Alan, what you said is typically you kind of see signs start to appear after a couple of years, and then they take a couple more years to take effect and so on.
Yeah, for sure. So like example, right? Like when we first, on ClickBank days, we used to do launches, right? And like everybody was doing like $37 books, and that was the thing, like $17 books. Before that was like 97, right? So it kept going down. And then I came in with like $497 VSLs, and like I made like millions, right? And like killed it. And because the pendulum was starting to swing the other way, because what ends up happening is like you have a spectrum of customers, like 100, right? And you have like on top, you have like 10% who are all like, I'm just going to buy the most expensive thing I can. I don't care. And then you have the ones on the bottom, they're like, I'm just going to buy the cheapest thing. I don't care, right? And so it swings back and forth, right? Basically when the one saturates, right? And like basically people emulate, copy each other, and then people become very familiar with the sales process. So like, now it's like, people are tired of spending high ticket, like on the front. So like they want to try things and dabble in things with low ticket. So that's why low ticket is kind of taken over. And then once everybody and their mom does, low ticket and books and courses, it'll be time to do high ticket, because people will be like, you know what, if it's more expensive, it's good, it's better, right? And basically it'll swing back that way. So it takes about 2 to 3 years for the model to catch on, and then it takes about 2 to 4 years to 3 years to take effect, and so there's always signs, right? So the signs are, the CPA goes up, there's lots of offers, a lot of people copying each other, doing the same thing, etc., right? And so like right now the pendulum is swinging back to the book offers, and that's why in our sales page we say you got like 2 to 3 years to do it. Like milk it, make as much money as you can, and then it's going to swing the other way. And then it's going to swing midway, right? It's going to be about $497 offers. That's going to be the sweet spot. It'll stay there for a bit. Then it'll go up to like $2,000. Stay there for a while. Come back on this side. So back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And this happens like a lot in other markets in life. But basically, like especially in this market, this happens. So right now the pendulum is swinging into this side. And like one of the reasons, like it's so easy to do this for us now is because the market's in our favor, right? And so like if the pendulum is that way, then it's like those guys have the advantage of CPA. So for example, if the market is rewarding high ticket offers, they can afford to pay more, right? But obviously people aren't converting, they're not buying it, so the market is rewarding this pendulum, and so it goes back and forth, right? And so like based on what side of the pendulum you're on, like your success is greatly, increased. The probability of success go through a roof,
Yeah, I think that's really big. The pendulum's going to keep swinging. So, and that's also, an important thing to mention is the fact that internal chats between me and Alan is like, it's very important that we don't become the book guys, because we don't give a shit about books, guys. Like I said, the outcome is we help businesses grow, and the book is just the best thing right now, or a course or whatever. But we're not going to be the book guys, because one thing that I don't want Alan to go into this, because he can probably give you another 10 minutes on this, but he likes to say that we're in a dynamic creative market. So that it's creative and it's dynamic. It's changing all the time. So you got to keep up. And the pendulum is kind of part of that. And things are changing all the time. So we can't be the book guys, because then our solution is not going to be working, 3 years from now. And then we got to pivot into the latest thing that's working right then and there.
Yeah, then you're known as the book guy, and that sucks. But yeah, we'll talk about the market quadrants like tomorrow or something, the day after.
Yeah, I think this is actually the last thing before we go into Q&A. So I'll do the ECA process with you guys, or we will do the ECA process with you guys. If you have questions, you can line them up. We'll probably go through a couple of questions, at least ones that we find will benefit everybody else. So if you do have questions, start lining them up in the chat right now. And the ECA process is kind of like, and I love that you came up with this, Alan. It's kind of like a really, I don't know. It's a great way to think about building an offer or a lot of things, really. But it's a way to do it. And it's a way to do it with the least amount of work. It's still going to be a lot of work, but the least amount of work, do it right, and to do it as fast as possible. So ECA stands for economics, components, and assembly. And we're going to break each of those down a little bit more. But Alan, why don't you share, why it's so hard to like create something from scratch and assembling something, just buying components like I mentioned in the sales video for automatic clients. Apple gets their screens from Samsung and the battery from somewhere else and the camera from somewhere else. They're just purchasing all these components, and then what they do is just design it and assemble it. So maybe speak on why it's so hard to make stuff from scratch, and assembling is much easier.
Yeah, because it's like creative. Like you have to be extremely good at what you're doing, right? So like for example, like when you go to Dan Kennedy, right? So if you go to Dan Kennedy and you pay him $100,000 to write some sales copy, he's not writing it from scratch. Like he has like a small warehouse full of sales copy he's swiping from, and basically like he goes in there and he's just take the opening here, take that close from there, take that offer from there, and he assembles, right? Versus having to sit there and like create stuff, so creating stuff is really hard,
Very
and
hard.
so yeah, so like very few companies create everything, and like Tesla I think is one of them where they create most of their stuff, but like most companies they assemble. So like Apple, screens from Samsung, batteries from Panasonic, whatever, like Ford, all this stuff, right? So it's like I saw this Ford driving the other day, and it was like a sticker on it, right? It said something like, don't buy Chinese, whatever. But what the person realized, like, I didn't realize that his car is mostly built in China. Like all the parts are built in China, Thought it was pretty funny. And so, it's like assembly, right? Like you want to assemble. And that's why all Apple products are, created in, California and then assembled in China. Basically it's like creativity is really the problem, right? Because like you have to go create, you have to go think, and then you don't know if you're creating right, and if, are you doing it right, are you doing it wrong? And it's like you're making mistakes and you're wasting time. And that's why like we have that, what's that thing, the rapid launch stack, whatever, like which you just take all our stuff, all the components, and you build an offer, and you're good to go. And then once you take the process, you assemble it, right? So it's like you have the assembly process is really really key in moving fast, right, and getting things done, but also getting things right, because what you're ultimately doing is delegating creativity, failure, mistakes to somebody else, and that person has paid that price, right? So for example, like the Rolls-Royce transmission, I think ZF something, like it's used in like 30 different cars, and so that company, they spent like 30 years making this transmission, and it's like now it's used in all these different cars because it's good, and so like Ford or GM or Chevy or whoever, they're like, do we go make this transmission and warranty it and service it, whatever, or can we just go license it? And they're like, let's just get this transmission over here, and they put it in all their cars, and they're doing assembly, right? So all the smart companies are doing this.
Yeah, and I think you've talked about how you are predicting that Tesla is basically trying to be a battery company.
Battery supplier. Yeah. So I think like Tesla basically has moved to become like a battery, because they're giving away all their patents, right? They're putting a lot of work into batteries, and so Tesla strategy is like, give away the patents, everybody does electric cars, and then like, supply the batteries, which is basically like how Middle East is so wealthy, because they supply the oil. So if Tesla is like this battery provider of the planet and everything is running on their batteries, that's a huge advantage,
Yes. And with that, I mean, economics, come on, we talked about it a lot. We don't really have to dig into that. Components, like we said, the iPhone, they get the screens from there, battery from there, camera from there, whatnot, and then you kind of focus on assembling that instead of building stuff from scratch. And I have this picture, I should have put it in here, but if you guys just picture this, right? If you were to go build a car, like just imagine building a car from scratch, like creating the spark plug, creating the tire, creating the rims, creating the gas pipe from scratch. Like how long would it take to go source all the materials and finding the manufacturer to create the parts that go into the car? So that's one step, right? And then you have the actual parts. So you could just go buy them from somewhere else, and then you could just focus on assembling those parts, which for a guy like me, who's more of a computer guy, who can't really fix shit around the house, that would be a very difficult task. But But that's it. We made it to the summary, which means I'm gonna run through. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, it's a lot longer than I thought it would be. I'll tell you guys. I'm actually
Hey, this is a common theme. I could have told you this before we started.
yeah, 2 hours. Holy shit. But yeah, one thing I want to say before Robert does a summary, like we have a theory course for those of you that get the book. You should watch it. It's kind of like a lot of this stuff with a lot more cursing. Before I learned to censor myself, because I had to get up at like 6 a.m. I had to get up at 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. to do that theory course with Robert because our time differences. But yeah, if you guys like this, go watch the theory course. It's a monster. It's a monster.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. So let's do the recap and get some Q&A and call it a day because I'm fading out. Like I'm doing this ketogenic diet and I'm like my energy's at like 0. So yeah.
This has been fantastic. But okay, basically, let's do this real quick. So, because I want you guys to think about your main takeaway as we run through these real quick, and then we're going to ask you to post them in the Facebook group. So, the $1 million idea, right? How small pieces add up to create a big business, acquire, then profit, and then competing on economics. That's what the AC model is all about. So, it's all about acquisition, but then don't forget the importance of retention, of actually nurturing those clients and getting them to come back and buying more. So we talked about competing on economics, and then we talked about the importance of not getting hung up on a conversion rate. You know, you got to factor in what is that contributing and what's the net effect of a conversion rate. We did a economics calculator walkthrough. We talk about who the AC model works for. The idea of complexity versus simplicity, it's very, very big. Took me a while for Alan to get me over to his side, but I fully see it now, and I agree with it. Path of least resistance and how that plays in. We talked about how the AC model kind of removes the luck factor and the X factor. Anybody can go out there, as long as you got a good hook or as long as it's interesting what you're selling, then you don't need luck factor and X factor. Anybody can sell a $5 book. All right. So it's a great equalizer. The core difference here is people willingly give you money instead of pushing emotional buttons. Be careful when you offer stuff for free. You want to have a transactional relationship. We should be charging for the 7-day fast start. Well, we kind of did, because it's part of the book. Some side benefits of the low ticket sales, how the model works. So primary profit center versus primary driver of the business. This one's big as well. Don't treat your customers as customers, treat them as leads, and you will go through the sales process as you should. Can skip this. Mega structures, utilizing Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and so on. The pendulum is going to swing all the time, so don't get stuck in one place. Realize that the market is probably going to change. Depends what market you're in. Some might not change, but you want to be aware of that. Definitely in our market, that's the case. And then the ECA process for building stuff very, very quickly. So with that, I would love if you guys could go into our Facebook group, the Automatic Clients Facebook group, and just tell us just write, my main takeaway from day one of the 7-day fast start was blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, and here's a link. I was gonna do that. I was getting rid of that link right. I'm gonna send you guys a link. Yeah, just go in the group and give us some feedback. The reason for that is we want to know what you guys value so we can focus on doing future calls and training and content.
We need a feedback cycle.
Yeah,
and this is our feedback cycle.
Yeah, there will be a replay, guys, for sure. But yeah, they're right there. Go to the Facebook group. Just give us your feedback, what you guys found valuable, what you guys hated, what you guys thought sucked, whatever. But just give us some love back, because
ideally, just the main takeaway, what's the one thing that really resonates with you? I think that's really going to help us. And as far as action steps go, we're going to get you that economics calculator spreadsheet, so you can go ahead and play around with that, and also just kind of start thinking about your offer and so on. And if you guys have any questions, we can answer those now. We are both pretty burnt because this ended up being twice as long as we intended. So I did see 2 questions. Why don't we just kind of dig through those and then kind of call it a day? What do you think?
So I want to say something. It's kind of funny. Like Chris has said, he says, epic webinar today, guys. Too many takeaways to list. Honestly, massively over-delivered. And that's just day 1. So we got 7. And I have 200 pages of notes like this and breakthroughs that we're going to share with you. And so it's fucking massive, right? So if you guys have any questions about any of this, we can talk about it. Yeah, we're both kind of toasted, honestly. I went to the gym before this. I came back and I had 3 eggs and
yeah, I'll answer a couple of these and then we'll call it a day. And then if you guys have other questions apart from your main takeaway, feel free to shoot them in the group and we'll see if we can come in there and answer. Chris had a question. In terms of testing, what kind of ROAS or negative ROAS do you look for before declaring something a winner or a loser? So I'll get Alan to speak on that. But typically what we observe is when we first launch a campaign, it's going to be very profitable. And then as you scale, this is something that we talk about a lot. I don't know if we talked about it in the book, but I think so. is as you scale, everything scales. People just love to look at the positive side of scaling, which is that, hey, more money is going to be coming in, but also you're going to have, that organism that you built, that business is going to end up being more complex because you're scaling. So you got more people coming in, you have more support tickets, you're going to need more people, there's more demands on your time, there's all these things. So I don't know if we have an exact ROAS. I will say, just to kind of put it in a nice and simple way, like when you first launch, you're going to be pretty profitable, and then as you scale, your CPA is going to go up. And also because the algos are typically going to give you the most interested people first, so the CPA is very low, and they're also very excited, they're very interested, they're the most interested people, so they're also going to be spending the most with you. So when you first launch is typically the best, or like when your budget is lower, and then as you scale, it typically is going to go down. So it'll go from profitable to break even to probably, a little bit of losses. And then ideally at that point, you have your back end built out so you can eat those losses so that you can go ahead and eat those other businesses.
Yeah. So basically, like, I call it the wobble, right? So when you get about 85 books a day, it's like when the math starts to break down. So like 0 to 85 books a day, it's like kind of steady scaling, right? And then after 85, you hit the what I call wobble, and then your math falls apart. So like your CPA goes up, your AOV goes down, right? Because Facebook will toss you in different buckets, and then that becomes a problem, right? And so that's why you have to have real tight economics. You got to have real tight economics for that wobble, to withstand that wobble. So imagine like a ship, right? Like being in the ocean, and if it's a tiny little boat, the waves can rock it and knock it over and flip it. But if you have like a big boat, which means your economics, you can withstand big waves, you can withstand a big wobble, But the other thing, to expand what Robert's saying is, like, when it comes to scaling, there's like scaling. I call it scaling in the right direction, And so a lot of people just want to scale, and they're just looking at money, right? Like money. They don't care what type of customers they work with. They don't care what type of culture they build. They don't care what type of people they have in their program. They don't care, none of that matters. It's just scaling, right? So people are obsessed with this word, but you got to focus on scaling in the right direction, like building the business to actually, like, beginning of the call, to be your dream business, to fit like your lifestyle, to fit your goals, to fit your needs, to fit what you want, So you have to scale in the right direction. And what typically happens is, like, when you scale the sales, you scale everything else. You scale customer service, you scale the people posting in group, you scale people wanting help, you scale, everything, the infrastructure, demand on your time, everything scales, And so you have to be aware of that as far as scaling goes. But yeah, as far as ROAS goes, I mean, typically, like Robert said, it'll be great in the beginning. It'll go down, 85 books wobble, and then focus on tight economics and optimizing. And then it's like, it'll work itself out, and then you can get to like 200, 300, 500 books a day. Pretty steady, and kind of keep it going.
Yeah, but typically what people tend to do, myself included in the beginning, is there's this desire to make a profit from the front end, but it just typically doesn't work out long term. That's why the back end is so important. You want to be able to put all the money that you make from your book back into advertising. Just make your economics better by not needing to take any money out of the front end. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think the biggest problem right now is that everybody wants to profit on the front end. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a really good, it's a good desire to have, But the problem is, like, in a market with zero barrier to entry, that's a delusion, And like, if you want what everybody else wants, you have the same funnel everybody else got, playing the same game everybody else plays, doing the same things everybody else is doing. You get the same numbers, and then you become average. Actually, you become sub-average, because it's like, everybody's going at your neck. And so you have to go at it, right? And so here's the next question right here. I don't know if this was the question, I'll just answer it. What type of upsells do you recommend? So, like, our whole model is basically, and we'll talk about this on the next call, but solution problem, right? Like, we solve people's problems, we solve people's problems, and new problems arise out of those problems, right? And so an example from that is, for example, let's say I'm hungry, right? And I'm hungry. Okay, fine. And so I make some food, and that's the problem solved, right? And that's the solution. But the new problem came out of that, which is I have to do the dishes, right? So fine, I put the dishes in the dishwasher, and then I have a new problem. I need some dish pods, right? And so it's like, there's always these, like for every, you can't create a solution without a new problem arising, right? You can't. And so, for example, like in this call itself, we solved one of the problems for you. We just kind of gave you an overview of this model, but a new problem came up, which is basically like, now you want to implement it, but how do you implement it, right? And so it feeds itself. And so when it comes to upsells, it's like, you should give away everything in your front end product, like go all out, and then pay attention to what other problems came out of you solving that problem, right? And so for us, it's like we gave away everything in the book, literally everything, right? Well, minus the new stuff we came up with, but it's all in the book. And then what ended up happening is like on upsell 1, we have rapid launch stack, which is like the problem is like, okay, now you want to launch it. And so the upsell is like, well, here's all the templates and everything for you to launch it, right? And then after that problem is solved. What's the next one? It's running ads. So upsell 2 is like, here's ads and here's all the stuff, right? So that's how it works. And so when you're architecting upsells on your funnel and your back end, you basically have to have this solution problem model. Most marketers, what they do is they'll have a problem solution model, right? Meaning like they'll have a problem and they'll say, I'll solve your problem, and then and they give us money for the solution. It's a bad way to do it,
Yep. And I think with that, I think it's a great time to conclude today's video. This was awesome. I had a really good time. I think we covered a lot of ground. I cannot believe the attendance rate throughout this whole thing. We basically held 100%. Some people came and left, but it speaks volumes, the fact that we had the same amount of people by the time we finished as when we started. So that's a great sign. It sounds like you guys enjoyed it as much as we did. So this is day 1. Go to the Facebook group. Go let us know your number one takeaway, or we will hire people to chase you down until you do. All right?
Yeah, for sure. All right, guys. Well, pleasure always. We're going to do a lot of this more with you. And again, we have like 200 pages of notes we're going to be sharing, and this is just a start. And yeah, man, this is a lot of people. So Robert just stopped sharing the screen. I'm like, wow, this is a lot. We'll shoot the replay up. I don't know, Robert, how long it's going to take him to like stitch it together, but yeah, we'll do it. And then we'll show you some stuff that nobody else is talking about or doing that's going to really give you a competitive advantage. And then we're going to do some we'll do some calls where we'll do like live hot seats. And I'm really good at sales copy, right? And then we'll do some show you how to write some copy, how to write upsells. And we're just going to go all out in this thing. I think this is like, I really think that the 7-day fast start is actually more valuable than most people's 65, their high ticket programs. And I think our free group is going to be more valuable than any other group out there. And so you guys are on a good ride. So yeah, if you're not too lazy, give us a shout what you guys found valuable. If not, no worries. And then we'll see you on the next call. And thank you for attending. And good to meet all of you guys. Good to meet all of you.
Thanks a lot, guys. Have a great day. Ciao.
See you.